happens. It's not giving me the light, though. It might not be... It might still... Okay, it looks like it's connected. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening, but it's not... It's not streaming the way it's supposed to.
Testing. Yeah, I don't hear anything. 13 seconds ago, it says, you're live. You're live.
So I don't know if it's streaming correctly.
Hey, what's up, Jack?
On your screen, is it showing my...
An ad. No. Yes.
Okay.
Now it is.
Yeah, the settings are a little wacky right now. Okay, but...
So, Sam...
Can everybody hear? Okay, well... I guess it's working well enough, then. I guess Chrome runs streams a little bit differently than Firefox, and I, for some reason, did not know that. So anyway, everybody, welcome to Spirit of Thersites. Today, we're doing part 1 of the Michigan national politicians. Of course, the title is way off, too. I've set a title for this, but it's not respecting what I set up. I'll fix that later, though. So it's just completely ignoring what I'm trying to do here. Anyway, so the point of the stream is to look at some national politicians from Michigan, meaning governor, lieutenant governor, senators, representatives, and then rank them based on how good they are in terms of building legitimacy in the country or harming it. So, that is the premise of the series. As many of you remember, it's been a minute since we did that. But anyway, Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's hot as shit outside, but I cleaned out my AC unit and I realized half the reason it's not working is because there's ice. There's ice built up in the thing, so I had to thaw it all out. Oh, Jack's saying that he can hear you, but sounds like you're in a cave.
I don't know what that would be.
Hey, how's it going, letter W? In OBS, are you sure the right? You have your mic pulling from the right spot?
I'm sure.
Okay.
It's the same way it always is, and I made sure to put the internal audio on Discord, so...
Cool. I
don't know.
All right, let us know, guys, if it's unbearable.
Audio is very fucking complicated. Most of the people who run audio on like major productions are people with a music background who know what all this shit is. I mean, frankly, it's not something I get. I've also noticed, too, that audio is extremely subjective in terms of what people like. Because some people like to hear the mic, where you're hearing it clearly sounds like somebody speaking into a mic. Other people like it more as if it's somebody speaking directly to you in a room. So that's a big difference.
As long as both people are roughly even in terms of volume, I think that's good enough. Because what sucks is when one person is just way too loud and the other's like you can't even hear him and you have to turn it up.
Yeah, that's another thing that's pretty hard to get right, though.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I love doing this series. This shit's fun. Let us know if it's unbearable. If the mic stuff's unbearable, we can try and like twist some knobs. But if it's good enough, we'll get going.
Usually I keep my own volume in my own ears fairly low, but so sometimes I don't know how loud other people actually are. Anyway. We'll start out our series by looking at our tier list, ranking from S to F. And today we'll be looking at the governor, lieutenant governor, and then the first 7 representatives of the state. Next time we'll do the 2 senators and the other 7 representatives. What will be interesting about this is that the first 7 districts we'll look at will have 6 Republicans, 1 Democrat. The second group will have 6 Democrats, 1 Republican. Michigan is not a very competitive state because, at least internally, the reason being that almost all the districts are heavily gerrymandered. Most districts in Michigan are safe, and almost all of the real political competition is in the primaries. This means that if any of the representatives we're talking about here were to get into a national race, if they were to try to run for president or VP or something like that, I can't honestly say that any of them have been tested politically in any meaningful sense. Because most of them have never been in a competitive election in their lives. Because in Michigan, they don't do those.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, what about governor's races and the Senate races? I mean, those tend
Those
to
are
be
much more competitive, yeah. But I mean,
right.
the House reps in this case are effectively virgins when it comes to running for office in a physical sense. I mean, because they have no idea how to win a general, because they don't have to.
Yeah, Michigan's one of if not the worst in terms of gerrymandering. Like
Yeah.
it's really bad. It's really bad, and
Although
they're
it's arguably not as bad as Pennsylvania, simply because it's not rigged heavily in favor of one party over the other. Whereas in Pennsylvania, the Democrats always win more votes for the House, but only have, I think, a third or less of the seats. Yeah,
now that Michigan is losing a district.
they are. Yeah.
So they're merging. It's not. I don't think any of these districts are going to become competitive as a result of that. But I do know at least one of the later districts, 1 through 7, are probably pretty safe. But I think 9 is going to get interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, the one person who's retiring we'll talk about. So there is a chance that 13 of the people
Oh yeah,
come back.
and the guy that's retiring, he's well.
We'll
I mean,
get to him.
it's Fred, right?
Yeah,
It's
Fred
Fred. Yeah.
But yeah, there's I think right now there are only 3 seats that are supposed to be competitive, which means that it's a pretty good year for Republicans because typically it's just each party has their 7 seats and that's it, and there's not really going to be a contest. And then once in a while, if there's a presidential year, one of the districts will randomly become competitive. But that's pretty much it.
Kildee's district, in terms of the Cook partisan ratings, his district's only D+1, so his is basically a toss up.
Well, his is the exception actually to this.
On the earlier part of the list. Okay.
Yeah, his district's the exception, and then the district that what's his name, Meijer is in. His district is not a complete shutout, but it does pretty solidly favor the Republicans.
His is R5. The highest. So, in case anyone's unfamiliar with the Cook partisan rating, I don't have the actual definition of it pulled up, but it basically it assigns a number and a party to each district that hopes to reflect the voting habits. So, in some of the districts, like in Detroit, some solidly blue districts get as high as D29, and then anything lower than that would become more competitive. D29 is obviously an extremely blue district, but the Kildee in the 6th district, his is like D+1, and the one Meijer, or the one that Thersites was just talking about, is R+5. So the lower that number gets, the more competitive it is.
Right. And the other districts we'll talk about, though, not too competitive.
Yeah. Basically everything on this list. I mean, we're talking R12, R9, R5, R14.
Yeah, we're talking about districts that if you win the Republican primary, that's the whole shebang.
Yeah. I mean, rural Michigan is basically Montana.
In many ways, yeah. I've also heard it argued that the cultural South contains all the rural Midwest as well.
And you know what's weird? This first, I don't know where we're gonna start right now on this list, but I mean, I'm just gonna mention that Jack, this first guy we're gonna talk about, Jack Bergman.
Yeah.
He doesn't even fucking live in Michigan the majority of the year. He literally goes down to the deep South to live in Louisiana.
Damn.
So like, yeah,
at least going to New Orleans.
I don't know where he's going, but he's there so often that he was serving on one of the fucking school boards in Louisiana while he's holding office in Michigan. And he's like, unfortunately, I think he's basically representative of his constituents. They don't like rural Michigan, especially northern Michigan. I mean, it's cold all the time. The snow is so bad. It's like Canada up there. And most people who live there, if they can, they leave for the winter.
Yeah. So you want to do the reps first and then circle back to the governor and lieutenant governor? Or how you want to do
man. Yeah, we could do that. Do that. The only thing I'm nervous about is that we won't have time to dig deep enough on the governor. So let's see if we can keep each one of these guys, these earlier guys, to 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So that we have enough room for the
And
for the
a
ending
fun
stuff.
observation, I had no idea there were so many Dutch Americans in Michigan.
Yeah, there's a
So,
lot.
Yeah, especially rural Michigan. A lot of people who trace back their heritage to the Netherlands. I had no idea. I don't think this first guy's Dutch, but the three people after him are. Our first gentleman is Jack Bergman from the 1st District. He was born in 1947, and I believe he is the oldest of the Michigan politicians.
Yes, he's almost 80.
Yeah, he's
75.
getting up there. Well, he's like 75-ish. He's a retired Marine Corps general. He reached the rank of 3-star general, lieutenant general, and his background is in naval aviation, specifically flying helicopters on assault ships. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he served all the way up until 2009. And the reason his career was so long is because he spent the majority of it after Vietnam in the reserves. Most of his career, honestly, is not super interesting. Now, of course, it's impressive if you make it the 3-star general. So don't get me wrong. I mean, this guy had to go through staff college and do a lot of other stuff. But most of his career after Vietnam was just flying helicopters in the U.S. and watching other people fly helicopters. That's really what it boils down to. So, I mean, It wasn't that exciting once he left Vietnam. But again, it's an interesting career path. He was in the Rhode Island National Guard for a bit, then went back to the Marine Reserves, got called up for long stints. So anyway, if you're looking at how people rise to the rank of general officer, his career is a little different than most I'm familiar with. But again, it's not ultra interesting.
Yeah, he served. Yeah, I mean, he did a fuck ton of military stuff and flew like, I don't know, his Wikipedia page is just full of different kinds of helicopters and different kinds of planes. So like,
yeah, the main one he flew was the UH-1 Huey, which was the workhorse of the American military up until about the 80s. Sort of like the classic helicopter you see in all the Vietnam movies.
Okay.
And he also apparently flies fixed-wing aircraft, which is not uncommon because helicopters are way harder to fly. So if you can fly a helicopter, you can almost certainly fly a fixed-wing aircraft. So anyway, he is someone who, I guess he was retired between 2009 and about 2016, and then he, got bored in retirement, decided to run for Congress, and he ran on defending the Constitution, doing the balanced budget amendment, something that is kind of a libertarian priority. And in Congress, he's been fairly quiet overall, and obviously he's on a lot of defense committees, as you might imagine. And the only real time he made any noise was backing the big lie in 2021. He also, interestingly enough, despite the fact that he's kind of like a generic Trump supporter in many ways, one area of difference is that in September 2017 he joined the Climate Solutions Caucus, and he voted for the Tribal Coastal Resiliency Act, which allows the Department of Commerce to give Native American groups grants to preserve historical areas, protect the environment, and combat climate change in the Great Lakes area. So that is, I guess, his one sort of area where he deviates from the party norms, but otherwise he's kind of like the archetype of the retired generals and admirals who back Trump. The group that Trump really likes to tout as his base, or one of his bases.
Yep. He was one of the 126 that signed the amicus brief in hopes of overturning the election.
Yeah, but it's interesting how much of a backbencher he is, given that, I mean, his whole career was being a leader, and now in Congress he's just kind of there. I guess because he's so old, he's just like, yeah, I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna, hang out.
Yeah. He's not even from Michigan. He spent a lot of his time, I think he was born in Minnesota.
Yep.
He went to college in some private Christian university in Minnesota. That's where he went to school, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and that's a little unusual because so far Michigan has the most native sons and daughters in office compared to the other states we've looked at.
Yeah.
A lot of other states have many transplants, but not Michigan.
Yep. I think he's the only one on this list. Letter W, thank you. Let me know if I keep doing it. I know I can lean pretty far back from the mic, so it's hopefully not that loud. But Thersites, you could notch me down a bit on your OBS.
I already notched you down quite a bit.
I'm sorry.
But you're at half.
No. Okay, not nudge me down like a tenth or two.
You're already at like 65%
Yeah.
before that.
Okay,
So now
here, let
you're-
me peek it. That's good right there. Yeah, because now I'm not peeking red. That's good. Oh, I can see it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway, yeah, that's good.
Okay.
So this fucking guy, apparently, he was on the baseball field when, do you guys remember back when there was a Republican baseball practice that was shot up by like some crazy left-wing guy? He was on the field. He was one of the dudes getting shot at.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see. It's 2021. Shooting. Congressional baseball. Yeah, here it is. In June 2017, Bergman was one of the Republican congressmen who were practicing on the Alexandria, Virginia baseball field for the annual congressional baseball game when James Hodgkinson began shooting at them, hitting 4 people, including Steve Scalise. Afterwards, Bergman blamed the incident on anti-GOP rhetoric and the media. He voted with Biden's stated position roughly 6% of the time, and then literally signed the amicus brief to overthrow the election. So this dude's kind of like saying, "Oh man, you guys are shitting on the GOP. We're not doing anything wrong," and then is literally doing all the shit that the press says he's doing.
Well, it's interesting. 6%. Yeah, I'm trying to think because Biden hasn't really proposed too much that Republicans would be adamantly opposed to compared to a lot of presidents, but I guess that puts him pretty firmly on the right without quite being an extremist. Because I mean, some people would, especially if they plan on running for president, would make sure that number's 0%.
All right, I think it's been about 7 minutes on him.
Yeah. So his top donors, just real fast.
Yep.
He's not the greatest fundraiser, actually, but you know, his top donor is actually a Buick GMC dealer, Charles Schwab, which is financial, I don't know how to pronounce it, but DUCHOSSOIS Group, which is a financial holding firm, Rich Dad Company, which is financial advising, and Savoy Exploration, which is drilling. So again, you know, a Republican who works for banks and the oil companies. We've never seen that before.
Right. Yep. He's one of the first.
Yep, one of the first I've ever seen who works for either of those interests.
Can you pull up a map of Michigan really quick?
Yeah.
Possibly one with the districts on it.
Michigan
I could even
congressional districts. Yeah, I was just looking at that earlier.
Because Michigan's interesting. I mean, it's a pretty big state, but the winters get so bad in the north that if you were to draw an imaginary line, kind of where like the thumb, any one of those is fine for now.
Yeah, these aren't
probably older, but if you were to draw an imaginary line from where the thumb connects to the rest of the hand, 90% of the population lives below that line. So the population that lives, and plus he's got the single most conservative district, or the single most conservative county in all of Michigan is in his district. So just a bunch of like mostly empty counties that are super right leaning. So yeah, see where that the thumb connects to the hand there? If you were to draw an imaginary line all the way across the state, 90% of Michigan's population is below that line.
It's right here. Yeah. Where below the thumbs up.
Yeah.
All right. That makes sense. I mean, because again, it gets cold as fuck the further north you go, and especially with the lake effect.
Where the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula connect, there's a bridge called the Mackinac Bridge, and there's also an island called Mackinac Island that it's actually a really cool place, and there's a lot of tourism. Like people from the southern parts of Michigan during the nicer summer months, I mean, they have cottages and like lake houses and all that shit that they go up. We call it I'm from Michigan, so like I know this. We call it going up north. And it's like just a thing that you do in the summers. But Mackinac Island, they banned cars, so they only have horses for transportation besides ambulances, obviously. Like emergency vehicles are allowed to still operate. But it's beautiful up there. Like the bridge is beautiful, the island's beautiful. It's all great. It's actually where I proposed to my wife, and we wanted to get married up there, but my mother-in-law is allergic to horses, so We
Oh.
could, there are horses everywhere, so we couldn't do it.
Oh, damn.
But yeah, it's beautiful, but it's mostly touristy stuff and a bunch of old retired people that basically like snowbird to other parts of the country during the winter. So
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting district. It's a cool place, but yeah, not much going on. Really, not much going on up there.
Doesn't sound like it. All right. Well, what do you think about Jack Bergman rating-wise? I mean, he's kind of the definitional backbencher partisan, except for a few climate things here and there.
Well, the amicus brief thing really, really, really bugs me. So I can't go high at all for him, and I think he voted against both impeachments.
He did.
I would like to know if he voted to certify the election after the riots.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I can offer a little grace if maybe he decided he announced his intention. He intended to object to certification. It doesn't say anything about him changing his mind, so I don't know. I want to go pretty damn low for this guy.
Yeah, I'm thinking E, just because he at least does try to take a local perspective on environmental issues, because one thing that the conservatives in northern Michigan actually do care about is protecting the Great Lakes.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, it is really
so-
pretty up there, and we have a lot of coastline.
So that's one area in which he actually represents the people in a meaningful way and does something that's actually positive.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, he's literally just backbench Republican who, just carries the party line, number 98. Yeah, I'm surprised we were able to talk about him this long.
That's funny.
All right. Next up, we have Bill Huizenga. Or Huizenga, I'm not sure exactly how you say his name. He is...
Bazinga.
Huizenga.
Bill Bazinga.
Huizenga. Is Bazinga?
No, it's Huizenga.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say
Huizenga.
Bazinga.
I was gonna say, like, that's a weird way to pronounce a B or to spell. Okay, anyway, so Huizenga, he was born in 1969, so quite a bit younger than Jack Bergman. He's in his early 50s. He's served since 2011. His family owns a gravel business, and while we'll see that there's a pattern of Republican representatives in Michigan who are the heirs of businesses, this is by far the most modest of those. He was elected to the state's 90th district in 2002. Got reelected 3 times. Michigan is term limited, at least at the state level. So you can only serve 3 terms in the state house. He did that. Then he was done. He was out of politics for a couple years. Then he won a very difficult primary battle in 2010 when Peter Hoekstra retired. And Hoekstra was actually a pretty big deal. I don't remember a lot of the details. Remember when I watched the news in the late 2000s, Peter Hoekstra was at the center of a lot of things. So Peter Hoekstra retired. Huizenga won a pretty tough primary. And this is a district that has been safe Republican since 1935. And I believe that it's since its formation in the 1870s, it's only been held by Democrats for 4 years total. So, about as safe as safe can be.
Yeah, it's R9, so it's a little less partisan than the last one, which was R12, but it's still, I mean, it's up there. It's safe. It's definitely safe.
Yeah, I guess it also means, because it's definitely winnable if it's only R9, but I mean, it must mean that the Republicans are running a fairly competent operation to never lose it the way that they do. So Huizenga has been pretty quiet in the House. There hasn't been a lot of activity on his part. He's not the kind of guy who sponsors a lot of bills or really takes a lot of stands. He voted for Trump's election challenge. And
yes.
That's actually probably the most interesting thing he's done. It took him about a decade to do anything that I guess people cared about. And he voted with Biden 14% of the time so far, which is actually a fair amount.
more than Jack. Yeah, more than Jack.
Because that puts him firmly in moderate territory just by voting. I mean, because it used to be moderates could vote up to 30, 40% with the other party. But today, if it's over 10, that's actually fairly unusual.
these first two guys, they're not as bad as it gets, but they are two of the worst. You'll see what I mean when we get to 3 into 6.
Yeah, well,
but Huizenga, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead with Huizenga.
I was just gonna say Hoekstra was one of the founders of the Tea Party. So this guy, he may not have done much yet, but he definitely talks the talk. I found like this vlog that he did as he was walking in to cast his last vote before he was going on vacation. And it was all like huffy and just, he was like, hey, you guys, I'm going in for this vote. I don't want to do it. Man, these Democrats, I'm telling you, these Democrats, they're sending their money overseas. They're sending their money all over the place. I don't know what to do. All I can do is vote. That's what I'm doing. So I'm just going to vote. You know, that's all I can do at this point. He's also in pretty tight with the DeVosses during the Flint water crisis thing. I forget. I think he knows her husband or some shit. I don't remember. We'll get to the DeVosses, but she's among many businesses, side businesses that Betsy DeVos has. One of them is hawking boxed water, and Huizenga thought it was a great idea during the Flint water crisis to just say, you know, guys, bottled water's great, but why don't we give the people of Flint boxed water? And it's like, I understand there's a conversation to be had about recycling and plastic water bottles are bad, but it's just so clear that the reason he was getting up to do that and talk about any of it was because he wanted to get in good with DeVos and like clearly just hawk his friend's product on the House floor.
Also, you know who his number one donor is?
Is it DeVos?
Yeah, it's a DeVos company, Amway Alticor Inc., which,
yikes,
again, is you'll see them show up a lot, but that is the DeVos operation that donates the most money to candidates. And so yeah, it's clearly a matter of him trying to repay his donors by making sure they get a sweet ass contract.
Right. He's younger. He's on the younger side. He's not the youngest on this list, but he is on the younger side. He's from Michigan.
Yep.
Another interesting connection to the DeVosses is that he went to the same private Christian university as DeVos did. It's called Calvin Evangelical. So now we've got two guys that instead of going to a real college, they went to private Christian evangelical universities. I don't know if there's any link there. They both also signed the amicus brief to try and overthrow the election. I don't know if there's any connection there. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, it seems like the evangelical members of Congress were more likely to go with the brief.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's some kind of like loyalty that's drilled into you in these fucking schools, man. I actually...
Yeah, probably not just the schools themselves, but also just the years leading up to that made, you know, this person want to go to such a place.
Yeah, I assume they went to private Christian high schools and the whole shebang. There's a lot of private Christian stuff going on, like in terms of you know, they're
I don't... Because if you look at when that movement started, like the heavily Christian schools, I mean, Huizenga might be young enough to have been a part of that, but most likely not.
We're talking the 80s?
Yeah, I mean, it could have... If it started, it would have been basically when he was in high school or about to graduate.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because he's 53. He was born in 69, so he would have been 20 in 89.
Yeah, because that shit really didn't become prominent until the 90s. So
wow, so he was one of the earliest ones into like an evangelical. You're talking high school though. That's what you're talking about. High school.
The colleges have been around for a while, but the high schools are a more
interesting
development. Yeah. His other big donors are Hallworth Incorporated, which is a huge furniture company with like a $2 billion industry. Daily Consulting Group, which are basically lobbyists. Rock Holdings, this is a holding group for mortgage companies, and TransUnion LLC, which is a credit thing. You can do credit checks and transfers and things like that. My takeaway for Huizenga, to quote my notes, is boring business Republican.
Yeah, boring business Republican who wants to be more of a Tea Partier, but just can't actually find the crazy fire. Drive to right. Yeah. Like he'll cast the votes, but he doesn't really feel the burn, you know. He doesn't really feel it.
So it's kind of like Paul Ryan without the initiative.
Yeah, in a way. Liam Booth said that your mic's echoing a little bit. I don't know if it's something you can control.
Hold on, I'll just... that's about all I can do. I don't know why it does what it does.
You cut out for me, so whatever you just did, don't do that again.
Well, I unplugged my mic and then plugged it back in.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I have a feeling it has to do with when you pull up a certain window.
Hold on, my mic's flashing red.
I'm bringing you a new mic and a new desk.
My mic is fine. It's actually the best USB mic you can buy.
Oh, hell yeah. So then it has to do with the program. It's got to do
with the program, maybe the computer, I don't know. Actually, I think the computer's fine too, because I only use it for this, and it doesn't have a lot of wear and tear. I don't know what it is. I'm not an audio expert. Yeah. I've never played music, so I don't understand sound in that way.
I don't think there's much more to say about Bill Boxwater.
Yeah.
I think we're about done with him.
To me, this guy's just a corporate whore. There's not anything else to him. He's an F. And what do you think?
I'm cool with that. I don't see any of the redemptive, like, environmental stuff that the other guy had.
And he's here to serve business, and that's it. That's his only reason for being there. Fuck him.
And again, like, with the amicus brief thing, like, it's a huge fucking deal. And only 100 and some Republicans signed on to that. So it's not even... Yeah. And how many total are there in the House? We're talking half.
190. I don't know, something like that.
Republicans? Wow, damn.
Yeah.
So okay, so it was the overwhelming majority of them. Damn. So I was thinking that maybe these guys, there was something wrong with them personally, but you know what? I think it's going to be the other way around, because we can move on to Meijer now. Meijer, I think, is super, super interesting.
Yeah, he's very
30-something.
Different.
He's fucking.
He's like 33. He was born in 1988.
The first chance he got, he spoke out against Trump, against the riots.
Yeah, he's also, I would say, the richest person we'll talk about by birth.
Oh, by far.
Although I don't know, the next guy might beat him by a little bit. Or maybe the guy after him, I can't remember which one's the Whirlpool guy. But
multi-billionaire. No, Peter Meyer's a multi-billionaire. I can almost guarantee
he's the great-grandson of the guy who founded the Meijer
store.
So that's basically Walmart for people with money, which is the Meijer, what it is.
Is that how you think of Meijer? That's so interesting.
That's what it is. It's Walmart for people who have money.
Because it's not in every state.
It's not, but it's in a lot of... you only see it in sort of nice, I guess for lack of a better term, shopping areas, like
oh, that's hilarious.
Up near Dublin, here in Columbus, something like that. You don't see it there are no downtown Meijer stores, and there aren't any Meijer stores in places where
I'm looking this up,
like multi-story homes.
Because in Michigan, like they're like I lived up. I'm sure you guys have all heard of 8 Mile, right? That's like Detroit on 8 Mile.
Yeah.
I lived north of that. And I actually grew up with a Meijers close to me, but I'm not that far north of 8 Mile.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Meijer is necessarily for rich people, but it is for people who have a decent amount of money, because you absolutely will pay more at Meijer than you will at Walmart or Target or something like that.
Interesting. That's interesting.
If you just go item by item, you will pay more for each item. And
I guess there's really only one. There's really only one in the area.
Personal space, because it's more spacious inside.
Yeah, That's so funny. I've never thought of it that way.
So anyway, Peter Meijer, I think he's sort of an example of noblesse oblige. The idea of if you're a rich person, you owe it to society to live a life of service, kind of like the Kennedy family kind of deal. So Peter Meijer wanted to go to West Point, and he got in, of course, because he's well connected. But he decided it wasn't for him. So after 1 year, he left West Point and went to Columbia.
For cultural anthropology of all fucking things.
I know. So this guy graduated in 2008 with a degree, or no, he went to Columbia, not graduated, and he eventually graduated with a BA in cultural anthropology, which is an interesting major for someone like him. especially someone who went on to become a Republican congressman. You know, wouldn't expect cultural anthropology majors.
I
But,
know,
you know.
I know, it's so interesting.
Anyway.
But then he got his business. He majored in business
did
at NYU
later.
his first master's after.
Yeah, so it's interesting his career path in that way. But also, I think his cultural anthropology might have come in handy in some of his jobs, like when he did conflict analysis. So he did cash in on it some. He was involved in that controversy at Columbia when the school got rid of ROTC because, of course, he was a part of that. He eventually went into the Army Reserve from 2008 to 2016. So rather than doing the 4 years, if you go into active duty, he went into reserves, did 8 years. And during that time, he went to Iraq once. He, as you said, after his military service was over, went to New York University, got an MBA in 2017. He worked at an NGO for conflict analysis. He worked as an analyst at Illich Holdings for less than a year. And these kind of short stints are pretty common for especially people of our generation who are wealthy and from political families. They're just resume patters. So, I mean, all his stints are pretty short. It's just to make an impressive resume. Like, I've done 5 different high-paying, high-skilled jobs. I mean, I might not have been there long enough to get a cup of coffee, but I was there.
Punkademic mentioned Eminem. Yeah, 8 Mile. Yep, that's that 8 Mile. My grandma lived on 8 Mile. I actually stayed there a lot, like almost every weekend.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a fun area. My grandpa died recently, so we had to sell the house. So they don't have it anymore. That's a shame. Yeah, but Eminem actually mentions Myers in one of his songs, which is hilarious. He says, "I'm the guy with the Oscar at Myers."
He's really big into veterans projects. I mean, as a veteran, makes sense. He's big with this group called With Honor Super PAC, which just encourages veterans to run for office, supposedly to reduce partisan tensions, which I don't know if there's a lot of evidence that helps reduce partisan tension. I mean, we just saw backbencher Jack here, Jack Bergman, who is just a Republican line tower, so he's not really reducing any partisan tensions. But at least Peter Meijer seems to be a little more legit about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the coolest parts of like one of the first things he said when he got into office. Even before he got in, he spoke out publicly against Trump, against all the riots and shit, and voted. Let me make sure on this. I'm pretty sure he voted in favor of the first impeachment. Maybe not the first. No, the second impeachment. He voted in favor. One of only 9 Republicans to vote to impeach Trump. The other is on this. One of the others is on this list as well. So 2 of the 9 Republicans in the entire House were from Michigan. They were not Jack Bergman or Bill Huizenga. They were Peter Meijer and one other guy. And I do not think it is a coincidence that instead of some fucking private podunk Christian university, he went to Columbia. He went to a real fucking college. You know, he wasn't part of it. The other guy
was Upton.
In Upton as well. Upton did not go to a private Christian college. Upton went to University of Michigan.
We'll get back to it later, but that might be a reason why Upton's deciding to retire, because he managed to thoroughly piss off the Trump wing.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, and there's also a good chance Meijer gets ousted for that reason too.
We'll see. I mean, he rode the Trump wave into office.
He did. Although it's interesting, when he did run, most of the people who helped him, because he got a lot of support from the party establishment, because again, his family is extremely wealthy and well connected. But he got direct support from Pence, Crenshaw, the politician from Texas, McCarthy, who's about to become Speaker of the House, assuming Republicans win the House, Steve Scalise, and Tom Cotton. So, I mean, these are some big-name players on the national stage. Right. And he did say he'll go work with Trump on common objectives, but it doesn't appear that he got as close to Trump as most. And he barely won the primary, which makes me think that he really was never quite in the Trump camp. Otherwise, he would have had a much easier time winning that primary.
I mean, I'm happy for him. I'm glad he made it. He's super young, and if he can bring some of that, more level-headed thought into the party and kind of inject this like new breed of Republican. That would be fucking great.
I think in many ways he's actually kind of a throwback to the moderate Republicans of the 70s and 80s. I mean, he's not.
I mean, imagine his parents are so rich and have been so rich forever. His great grandpa founded Meijer. So I mean, he's lived, like you were saying, extremely wealthy his whole life. So
yeah,
I mean, it kind of rests on the institutions. Like, it's really important for them to exist and for them to have this kind of wealth. I read that Meijer's itself, particularly the one in Lansing, Michigan. This is bad. This is really bad. Wanted to upgrade its stores in like 2012, 2013 to keep up with some of the others, Walmarts or whatever. And they went ahead with these renovations. I forget how much they costed, but in exchange, the city offered to let them go tax-free as if they were not in operation from 2012 to 2013, and basically write that entire year of taxes off in order to fund all of the renovations, like in the city of Lansing, where the school district is suffering. I
mean, there are a whole lot of businesses, when they move to town, they sign sweetheart deals where they won't owe any tax revenue for X number of years, and then the city funds all their connecting roads, and then gives
it had been there. This is a Meijer that had been there for a while. They weren't like a new
one, but I mean, there is a race to the bottom where communities will strip themselves bare to please businesses. Unfortunately, that is extremely typical of the way that business is done in America today.
Christ.
And also, it's funny to me that people talk about, you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make a living as a businessman. You got to compete in the marketplace. It's like, really, all you need is a good lobbyist. If you got a good lobbyist, you'll probably have enough tax benefits to make sure you're getting money. But anyway, one thing about Meijer's, the store, though, that is worth noting, they do pay quite a bit better than like Walmart or Target. And I think they provide benefits, so that is something that's actually significant.
Yeah, I don't remember if they're union bashing as bad as Walmart.
I don't think they do. I don't think they have a union, or maybe they do it. There's one of those stores that does have one. It might be Costco though. But anyway, Meijer definitely, in general, treats its workers better than like Walmart or Target.
Right.
So if you have to work a job like that, not only would Meijer be easier on
as of 2022, Meijer is unionized.
Okay, well there you go.
Very cool.
So
very, very cool.
Yeah, if you have to work a shitty retail job, that's a little less shitty than most of them. All right, so his other big controversy, aside from opposing Trump during the big lie, and
Kroger is unionized too.
Yeah,
interesting.
Kroger is.
Basilius, he mentioned earlier he was having trouble titling the stream. I don't know if that'll be resolved later. But
I'll have to fix it later by editing. I can actually fix it now if I want to, I guess.
Yeah, I have a funny story that's like uniquely Michigan and involves Meijer. So the bottle returns and can returns in Michigan. I'm not sure if they have these in every store, but they had bottle and can returns in every Meijer's. And Michigan has a 10% deposit on all can and bottle returns. So unlike a lot of states where it's only 5 cents, you can get twice as much in Michigan. So like in high school, I would just go around the lunchroom and collect cans and bottles so that at the end of the week I could go return them, and I could have, I'd get like $20 sometimes if I could collect up to 20 cans. And eventually I got curious. If you could take, because I wasn't making a ton of money, my parents didn't give me money, so I had to fucking make it one way or another.
Yeah.
And so I got curious. Could you take a full can, right? A full can, and put it into the machines and have it register as 10 cents? The answer at Meijer's is no.
Oh.
A full size can will, the machine's not stupid, and it knows no, there's liquid in here. I'm not accepting this. So I gave up for a bit, but then I had this other brilliant idea. Do the half cans work? Could you take a half can, which you still pay a full deposit on? This is like 14-year-old me, mind you. I was not the best decision maker, so I apologize in advance for all of the damage I did to those machines way back in the day. The half cans worked. You could put in a little fucking half can and it would register as 10 cents, but it could only eat about 10 of them before the liquid bin was full.
Oh.
So I would just go machine after machine and throw them in there until they all were full. And then like I walked out from the back room and they were all blinking and beeping. but it still worked. I walked out of there with $20
Nice.
one time. Not from all the half cans, but from the cans I returned, plus like 2 6-packs of half cans, so $1.60.
All right, it's not bad.
So I don't know if that still works, but I do not advise you trying it because it's basically theft.
Oh, well. Oh well. At least you were recycling.
Yeah, a half can. Kermit, there was this or Crazed Hermit. There was this trend where like Coca-Cola and like Pepsi, they would literally make half cans of soda. So instead of the normal 12-ounce cans or whatever, they would make cans that were half as big. They were like the size of baseballs. It was a half can. It was a literal half can of soda. Oh, and that's another thing. You don't call it soda in Michigan. You call it pop. Forever we called it pop, and then I moved out of Michigan when I was like 19, so I've been calling it soda ever since.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Oh yeah, his 2020 race was actually pretty tight, and it was unexpectedly so. It was the first time since 1982 that the Democrat has gotten more than 40% of the vote.
You're still talking about Peter Meijer? You mean a Republican?
Yeah. So I mean, he had actually
I
a
see
tough
what you're
fight.
saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah, more than 40%, right?
And when he did, he said Biden won. He spoke against MTG, voted for impeachment, and he said he had to start wearing a bulletproof vest because he kept getting death threats from Trumpers.
Yeah, after the impeachment vote, right.
And he also got in trouble in 2021 for traveling to Afghanistan with Democrat Seth Moulton.
Yeah,
Who was a candidate, one of the 85 people who ran for president in 2020.
Because traveling there would draw resources away from all of the other important shit they had to do. They were getting people out, so the Secret Service had to then pay attention to this congressman and not be able to focus on the job that they were supposed to be doing. That Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, that's super interesting. He condemned MTG for comparing wearing a mask to the Holocaust. He was the first Republican to condemn her remarks and said, such comparisons demean the Holocaust and contaminate American political speech. He's not the only one, by the way. The other one, shocker, is Upton.
Yeah. No,
we haven't had a chance to get to him yet, but Upton is super interesting.
And he also, just like Upton, voted to get out of Iraq by voting against the authorization of military force renewal.
Yes.
So I would say interesting career so far. His top donors, who do you think is number one, if you had to guess?
I mean, obviously the Meijer company, right?
Yep.
His own family's money. Is it DeVos?
It is. Amway, Alticor. And then after that, Edward C. Levy, PVS Chemicals, and then Blue Cross Blue Shield. And if you look at it beyond that, then most of the donors to him are either in securities and investments or real estate. So he's one of those guys, at heart, he's still a business Republican. But he does have limits on what he'll tolerate. So, I mean, he's basically against what you might call the dumb right. The Marjorie Taylor Greene types and the Trump types. He's not really a big fan of them. But he's still in favor of, insurance companies running amok and doing whatever they want.
Right. Crazed Hermit, it's basically a cricket ball. Forgot you said Europe, so you don't know how big a baseball is. It's about the size of a cricket ball. Sorry, I'm reading chat here.
Oh, I can tell. All right. So, how do we want to rate Peter Meijer? Because, he's.
I don't know how high we're really gonna go today, but I'm thinking we might get as high as A. So I want to put him kind of upper middle if possible. So like maybe C, at least D, but maybe C.
Yeah. I'm cool with the C. I mean, he's someone who I don't think he's necessarily corrupt in the classical sense, because why would he be? He's fucking wealthy.
I know he's had the cushiest life.
The guy is still effectively a tool for corporate power. Now he does have some principles on some things, but there's still some.
Well, and his family's independently wealthy, so I think it's hard. It's a little harder to make that argument with him because he's got a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, but his family still has a large corporation, and he wants that to be. He wants their
I see
interests
what
to be
you're saying.
represented.
Yeah.
And also, it's worth mentioning that in many ways, the dumb right that he opposes gets a lot of its strength from the economic situation that we have, right? Especially from the refusal of the government to set any real priorities aside from let's fight over dumb cultural issues. So that's where the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world get their strength. So I would say there's also a problem with his analysis of where these problems stem from. Because I don't think he understands there's a link between corporate welfare and then the Trumps and Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world. Cashing in on the discontent that those kind of things cause. But anyway, yeah, I mean, clearly better than the first two guys, not really a question there. Next up, we have John Moolenaar from the 4th District. Yet another Dutchman.
Yes.
He was born in 1961. He has a master's in public administration from Harvard, 1989. And he's one of those guys who could not wait to get into politics as soon as he was done with his education. He worked at Dow Chemicals as a chemist for 8 months, and he decided, fuck this, I'm going into politics. So he went into the state house, starting in 2002, so he probably did some local stuff. He did his 3 terms, just like a lot of these guys. He was in the Michigan Senate for 1 term, and then he was elected to the U.S. House in 2014. The 4th District is about as safe can be. He backed Trump in 2020 during the big lie. And aside from that, he's been pretty quiet, with the exception of he is relatively lenient on immigration, especially for a Republican. He was against immediately deporting Iraqi refugees, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing we didn't mention right off the bat is one of the largest immigrant groups into Michigan are from Iraq, even before any of the more recent stuff happening in the Middle East. We've always had a very large share of Arab Americans in Michigan, very large share.
Yes, I mean, it could just be trying to make sure his constituents aren't trying to get his ass out. So yeah, he's but again, I think that's pretty much true of every Republican I've ever looked at. There's always one issue that they're not right-wing on. And a lot of times it will be an issue that affects them personally. Like Dick Cheney, for instance, is pro-gay because his daughter's a lesbian.
Yeah.
But I think that's my rule of Republicans. So the Thersites law on Republican politicians is that if you look hard enough, you will find one issue where a Republican agrees with the Democrats. There's always one, maybe 2.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta keep it believable.
Yeah, I mean, there's always got to be one.
As you mentioned, he signed the amicus brief in an attempt to overthrow the election. But wait a second, I thought you said he went to Harvard, so there goes my theory.
Well, no,
wait a second.
That's the thing about the elite schools. A lot of Republicans who back really,
there's more
backward shit are Ivy League.
Look where he got his bachelor's from. He got his master's from Harvard.
Yeah.
His bachelor's he got from Hope College, a private Christian university in Michigan. All right, so my theory, I'm 3 for 3 here, man. This is good. 4 for 4.
In the past, we have looked at people from big state and then also Ivy League schools who have backed some things like.
Yeah, it's questionable.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just a Michigan trend.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying. There's something going on in these fucking schools in Michigan.
But also, it is worth mentioning that there are people who come out of Christian colleges and kind of revolt against what they were taught. I was interested. I got on a little, went down a rabbit hole about Liberty University a few days ago, and I found a channel by this guy who went to Liberty and became a hardcore atheist because of his experiences at Liberty.
Interesting.
So, any hardcore atheist and
I got a friend. I got a friend from Michigan that I was going to be a pastor, and he was preaching. and he said something the congregation didn't like. It was something about substitutional atonement, I believe, and they from what I can remember just chewed him out for it, and he said that was one of the first steps toward his religious liberation, so to speak. I mean, like the stuff in Michigan, I think is super interesting because if you look at a state like Alabama, where I forget it was like 90% of the African American population was in the South before, before a lot of the what's it called?
Civil rights.
Yeah, not just civil rights, but I think like immediately after the Civil War, there was a great migration where a lot of black people came north, right? And cities started getting overcrowded, so a lot of white people ended up retreating off back into the suburbs and kind of starting all of their own churches and stuff up there that weren't intentionally all white, but were all white because they were the ones that had connections to the suburbs that could move back and start these churches to begin with, and a lot of the black churches were all in the inner city. I don't know. It's just
that's true. I mean, I think that was part of white flight is they wanted to go to church locally rather than going to the places back in the city because they don't want to have to commute yet another day of the week. But yeah, I mean, I think once you get these more segregated churches, then you get more conservative churches.
Right, because everyone looks the same, and then it just becomes a pissing contest of who's the most Christ-like. Or who can appear the most Christ-like and the most saintly?
Yeah. So the top donors for John Moolenaar are Dow Chemicals. So he worked there 8 months.
He's a chemist. Yep.
And got there. He worked there 8 months in the late 80s and still got money from them. That's pretty impressive, I guess. Edward C. Levy Company. We talked about them earlier. Actually, no, we didn't. They are an Ohio-based construction company. They will show up again. Three Rivers Corporation, also construction, Emergent Biosolutions, and then, last but certainly not least, Amway Alticor.
Oh, of course.
So, what do you think about Moolenaar?
I mean, I think he's probably down there with Huizenga. I mean, it's such a shame that he could have gone to a place like Harvard and then still come back with all of these like horrible Harvard beliefs again.
The thing is, like Ivy League schools, I think one, they're overrated, but two, especially if you go there for business school or law school, your mind is probably already made on politics, and you're just there for technical knowledge.
But like Masters of Public Administration, he could have been one of the one of the slightly more intelligent guys, kind of arguing the nuances of whether or not they thought they had an argument. I
mean, the thing is, like, you can be very intelligent and still be fucking crazy. That is not incompatible.
Yes, thank you, Crazy Hermit. I'm not sure if the Reconstruction era is what I'm talking about, but you're probably right. I'm not a huge history guy.
I mean, I don't know much about this guy on a personal level, so. But then again, also, if you are a business Republican in a culturally conservative area, I mean, you can definitely play that shit up. There are a lot of people who pretend to be way more into that than they are, and a lot more religious than they actually are. I'm not convinced, for instance, that, say, Trump is all that religious in real life.
Right. He's quoting the Bible one time. He's like, and one of my favorite verses from 2 Corinthians.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common thing. There are a lot of people in politics, especially Republicans, but also some Democrats, who definitely play up their religiosity and are at least partially mailing it in and faking it.
But I definitely don't think that's the case for Bergman or Huizenga or even Moolenaar. I think they're all it's all coming from a genuine place. But I think that place has been drilled into them.
Well, with some of these guys, it's hard to tell if they're there for Christian stuff or they're there for business stuff or both, or what the percentage is. But I think, I mean, personally, my feeling on these three is that they are mostly there for business. Whereas we'll get to Tim Walberg in a bit. He's there for Jesus.
So why do you think it was so important? Why do you think it was so important for them to go to a private Christian evangelical university.
You'd have to
Why
ask their
would that have
parents.
factored in? They were fucking adults. They could have
but
gone
I mean,
wherever
a lot
they
of people's
wanted.
parents, especially if they came from well-to-do Republican families, their parents paid for it. So their
I-
parents might have forced them to do it. That's also possible.
I do think there is some element of fear that goes beyond the fear of disappointing their parents. I do think there is an actual.
I mean, it is possible. I don't know, but I don't want to get too far off on the idea that this Christian college is
That's
fault,
fine.
because I mean, I think that.
Oh no, not that it's their fault. I think that there's a correlation. It's not obviously you can't prove causation on that, but I think there's an interesting correlation there. That this idea of loyalty and this idea of it being kind of drilled into you, like here's your authority figures. You must be a saintly, holy person, and this and that. And I think all of that ties in to, when they're trying to make a moral judgment on, do I think Biden really won, or do I think he's a sneaky Democrat who stole the election? I think it ties in. It's not causal, obviously, but
yeah, there could be a correlation, but I don't know for certain. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty sure that there are people who end up going to those schools and going the other way. There are definitely people who go to public universities and come out hardcore Republicans. So I mean, of course, it's
I mean, Meijer, I'm sure he's like you were saying, like a throwback to some earlier breeds of Republican for sure.
Yeah,
but
I mean, the one thing I find funny is that people accuse public universities of being indoctrination centers when most people I know who go to college end up with the same politics they went in with.
I think it's largely a myth that college has this huge impact on your political leanings.
He also loves to talk about immigration, and not in terms of the Iraqi immigrants and stuff, but photo ops of him out on some boat in Texas just scouting out for illegal immigrants crossing the border. That kind of shit plays so well in Michigan, so well, because the suburbs are, like I said, super fucking white, and this idea of like the Mexican boogeyman just terrifies these people.
Yeah, I mean, I always hate that kind of shit, especially when you have like these, flabby ass old, crusty businessmen pretending that they're tough or that they're gonna like round up people. Fuck off! You're not doing shit. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway.
So is he an E or an F though? I guess that's really what we're.
Yeah. Right. E or an F. Jesus. I mean.
Because I guess the question boils down to: Is he
what is
sort of
what
a
is
typical
redeemable
example, or is he especially noxious? I mean, is there something about him that makes him stand out in your mind as like a go-to example of shittiness, or is he just kind of there?
I feel like he's equally as shitty as Boxwater Bazinga for sure. And I think that Jack would be too if it weren't for the redeeming stuff, the environmental stuff.
Yeah.
So I think he's down there as an F for sure.
All right, we can go with that. I think I'd have probably been slightly more generous, but I'm not opposed to giving him an F. I mean, we're talking about the difference between piss and shit. We're talking about E versus F. But yeah, I mean, he's And
not to mention with the Harvard degree in public administration, voting to overthrow the results of a democratic election. I mean, that's danger. He's like a sleeper, man. It's danger of a different kind, I think.
I mean, think about the Supreme Court justices, though. I mean, all of them are extremely well educated, and some of them are still fucking insane. I mean, so.
But none of them voted to help to overthrow the election. They've been nothing but annoying to Trump when it comes to his election.
That's true,
claims.
but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I guess having gone into grad school with some people who bragged way too much about their Ivy League origins and then not really done anything too impressive. I'm
fair.
Not
That's
that
fair.
impressed by Ivy League schools. I'm just not.
I don't think it is. I don't think it for me is really that important about where he went. But I think it's important that he got a degree that wasn't, real estate or politics or chemistry, like fucking not chemistry like his bachelor's degree. Like he went.
Yeah.
He went for an actual public administration kind of thing, and Meijer I think was business and cultural anthropology. But those guys don't. I mean, it's hard to make the argument. How much good does college do? I'd argue it does a fair amount of good, especially a master's degree does a fair amount of good. So he really understands the things that he's fucking up. I think is the danger with him.
Yeah.
Fuck where he went. I mean, he's still got it was a master's degree in public administration. Right.
That's true. That does make it a little more distressing. I know Harvard always talks about, well, we should instill a sense of mission and purpose in our students. But I really don't think they make any actual effort because they keep talking about how they should do it. So that tells me they're not actually doing that at all.
Fair.
But anyway, next up we have...
Yeah, we should move on to the only Democrat.
Yeah, our only Democrat, just like next time we'll have one Republican who... Well, I want just to preview part 2, I'm 99% sure the Republican in our next batch is a wine mom, but anyway.
She's from my home district. She's my representative.
Is she a wine mom?
Yeah. Fucking Lisa McLean, right?
Yeah.
That's gotta be who you're talking about. Yeah.
And she also looks like a wine mom in her picture, but also just reading about her, that's exactly who she is.
I can't wait to talk about her. I can't wait.
Yeah, actually, she might be the most fun, honestly. There's part 2 coming up. We'll talk about when later. But anyway, Dan Kildee, he was born in 1958, so he is in his early 60s. He has been the representative since 2013. He's a Democrat. He went to Central Michigan University, so the same school as Draymond Green on the Golden State Warriors. He majored in community development administration, so kind of like public administration, basically. Or not dissimilar, I guess, a little different. And he's someone who has been engaged in politics since a very young age. His uncle was, of course, his predecessor in the 5th District, but Dan himself was elected to the Flint Board of Education in 1977 at age 18.
He was 18 years old.
And he's been in office, so far as I know, nonstop ever since he turned 18.
Yep.
Maybe with one break of 2 years, but we're talking about somebody who literally this is all he's ever done. I mean, there are a lot of people who clearly just wanted to go into politics and they got into it as early as possible, but I mean, Dan Kildee did not fuck around or waste a moment. He just jumped in. 1984, he was elected to the Genesee County Board of Commissioners. He was there for 12 years. He rose to the top of the commission during that time. Then he went to be county treasurer from 96 to 2012. So this is someone with a ton of local government experience. He has no state experience, but he does have a lot of local experience. And during that time, one thing that he did is he created a land bank nonprofit to deal with urban decay, mostly just clearing out wrecked houses that might be a health hazard.
Yes.
This was the first land bank in the nation. I assume this is a concept he got from another country and imported it. And since it has been copied by a number of other cities. In 2012, his uncle retired, and so Dan decided to jump in and run. And I imagine there were a lot of passive voters, because both parties have a lot of people who just are party ticket voters. So that just having the last name Kildee was probably a guaranteed W. Especially if your first initial is the same as your uncle's. His uncle was Dale, he's Dan, so there you go. D. Kildee.
Right.
So obviously he won that easily, and just like a lot of the Republicans we talked about, he is in a very safe district. Or actually, you said it's a little bit competitive.
It's only D+1.
D+1, but he does.
But he's been there since he's been there since 2013. I wonder if there was some redistricting that went on in that 2012 election. Was that was his first run for the House? Yeah, it looks like it was.
And that was also, of course, a year where there was a little bit of a bump for Democrats. Not like 2008, but just a little bit of one.
So the land bank stuff must have been before.
Yeah, the land bank was in 2002, I think.
Yes. Okay.
I think that's probably still a signature achievement if I had to choose one.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of places like Flint or Detroit, I mean that it can definitely be a problem, and he's the representative. He represents Flint now. That's all I was gonna say.
If I had to really characterize Kildee as a politician, I mean, he's definitely kind of a backroom negotiator, power broker type. He's not the kind of guy who leads publicly a lot. He's the kind of guy who works behind the scenes. he got into leadership immediately when he got elected.
Can you pull up a picture of him, or maybe drag around his icon
Here he
down
is,
there?
right
It's hard
here.
to know which one of these guys we're talking
He's the
about.
guy who kind of looks like. God, who does he look like? There's someone. He kind of looks a little bit like Jack Nicholson, just a bit.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
Yeah. But anyway, so he's the kind of guy who does most of his work quietly behind the scenes. So unlike a lot of the others, he actually is very active within the party apparatus. And he's also, I think it's safe to say, a very establishment Democrat because he gets along very, very easily with the powers that be in the party. So he was the only freshman on the steering and policy committee from the opening, his first term. In 2019, he sort of went back to his land bank idea and got a bunch of money to help destroy blighted homes in Saginaw.
Yes.
He backed Steny Hoyer's Make It in America bill, which removes tax breaks from outsourcers. I think that's a good bill, but one thing to keep in mind, Steny Hoyer is the number 2 Democrat, so we have to keep that in mind. Dan Kildee is trying to suck up, and doing so pretty successfully. Although, as I've mentioned in the past, I don't know if we mentioned it on here, but Nancy Pelosi basically froze the hierarchy of the party back in about 2010. So the top 3 people in the party are still the top 3 people. Pelosi, Hoyer, and Clyburn. But I think they're about to step down finally after this election. Which is pretty unprecedented, by the way.
I'd love to hear you elaborate on that. I don't know if we have time, but that's interesting.
Maybe we can talk about that one next time. The sort of leadership pipeline clog. So, Kildee, he stood up for Flint in 2016. He gave a speech where he said the GOP not wanting to help proved that they were racist because Flint is majority black. I'm not sure if that speech was all that effective or not. Certainly Obama wasn't too impressed. I mean, Obama didn't do really anything for Flint.
Obama showed up.
He showed up and drank water, trying to show us it's fine.
I hope we get a chance to talk more about Flint. He said it. Obama's like, man, I know when I was a kid, I probably ate some paint chips that flaked off the wall, and I turned out okay. It's like, that is not what people need to fucking hear, man.
Obama went in to save the bacon of Rick Snyder, one of the most...
Rick Snyder.
We'll talk about him when we talk about the governor, but Rick Snyder is literally a fucking criminal.
Yeah.
It's not just a matter of disagreement. This man is a fucking criminal, straight up. Anyway, so Kildee tried to fight for Flint a little bit, didn't go too far. He helped found the Congressional...
he wasn't on the board. He wasn't on the board, and we'll get into it later. They had established emergency managers. Any elected official from Flint that could have done anything had their power stripped from them. They were now under the control of an emergency manager who was unaccountable.
Yep.
And we'll get into that. But
because Michigan in its constitution now has effectively a fascism clause. Anyway, so Kildee founded the Congressional Free Thought Caucus in 2018. He was one of the founding members. And basically the idea is to be reasonable, to use logic, and not to rely upon religious thinking. So all that's fine and well. He's voted with Biden 100% of the time. So
nice. Okay, interesting.
Sort of, like I said,
super party line.
He's basically the definition of a generic Democrat, the same way that our first guy was the generic Republican. I mean, Dan Kildee is that guy.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to push back a little because again, he's a lifelong politician. This is what he does. And during the insurrection, when he along with many others was fucking terrified when that crowd came and stormed the Capitol and lady got shot. One of his first interviews afterwards, he went to the interview with his therapist and discussed the actual PTSD and trauma and the anxiety associated with that, with like living through an event like that. And that scores so many points in my book because that shit's just not talked about. And it's definitely not talked about by like old white men from the suburbs. It's just, I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, that's sort of his standout thing, I guess, in Congress. But for the most part, this is someone trying to climb the ladder.
Plus the Congressional Free Thought Caucus.
Yeah, which is cool, but ultimately has not had a huge impact so far. I mean, we'll see.
I mean, he's going in the right direction. Plus the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I really dig this guy, and it could just be my.
The Congressional Progressive Caucus is a bit of a joke in many ways. I mean, they do not really have any standards for what constitutes a progressive. There is no test. There's no litmus to it. So
The Free Thought Caucus, though, that's a different story.
Yeah,
Established to
it
promote
is.
policy solutions based on reason and science and defend the secular character of government. That's fucking badass.
I'm cool with that. I'm also, of course, cool with his community idea, the land banks. I mean, so yeah, this is someone who's done a few good things. That being said, he sort of strikes me as someone who, you know how if you grow up doing something, you'll automatically have a certain level of skill with it because you just have so much experience. He strikes me as someone who has a lot of experience, but maybe doesn't have a lot of natural skill. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the impression I get. Like, he's the kind of guy who's, say, a competent musician or a competent tennis player, but he's not going to light the world on fire. That's his political skill.
Like, he never had to really learn how to do it from scratch. Like, it was always just kind of...
Right. I mean, because everybody around him did it, and it's like he's always done it, but he's not...
There was a piano in my house, so I always played piano.
Yeah, it's like he can play, but I guess he doesn't have the natural feel for it. The desire maybe outstrips the skill or the talent. But I mean, yeah, to me he's sort of the definitional backbencher who does a few good things here and there, but for the most part goes along to get along. Because I mean, he didn't really challenge Obama on the Flint thing. I mean, there was an implicit challenge, but he could have done more.
I had trouble
connections.
I had trouble finding a lot of his reaction to Flint. But again, I think the most important takeaway is that the power was stripped from a lot of those people. He could have spoken out more, but yeah, I mean...
Yeah, he could have done a lot more than he did. I mean, he did something, which is more than you can say for a hell of a lot of people, but he ultimately
if speaking out is not your strong suit. Right. If speaking out is not your strong suit, maybe you shouldn't really be in politics.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think he's probably still better than most people in Congress, but that does show you just how low the standards are.
You mentioned a speech though. I didn't get a chance to watch that speech. So one of these days I'm gonna go back and watch it. Yeah. I'm sure he did a lot. I'm sure he tried, but yeah, I mean it's nothing really sticks out.
Yeah, and I mean if you think about it too, what's the best way to avoid upsetting Democratic leadership? So if you're talking about an issue in Flint, which definitely has racial undertones, but it's ultimately about a corporate power grab to control the water. I mean that was why they did it.
Right.
Why they privatized the water there. So how do you oppose that without potentially upsetting any Democratic leaders who are all beholden to corporations? You make it purely about race and you ignore the corporate power grab. And that's what he did. And then also you pretend that it's just Republicans and that the Democrats have no complicity at all. So I mean, it was still an attempt to help the people of Flint, but without putting himself at risk in any way. So it would be sort of my critique of how he handled it.
Right.
But I mean, to me, his donors, sorry. So, Rock Holdings, we talked about them before. He also has support from the Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Union. He has support from Goodman, Acker, PC, which are personal injury lawyers. Personal injury lawyers, by the way, tend to be heavily Democratic. Prudential PLC, which is a British-based insurance company. And then Ernst & Young, or as it's sometimes called E&Y, which is a global accounting service with offices in pretty much every major city. So kind of a mix here of corporations, but also some union support, which apparently is not unusual for Democrats in Michigan. Makes sense. It's the home of UAW and a lot of other things. So, yeah, kind of mixed here with the donors. But, I mean, for me, I think Kildee's kind of a solid C.
C? Oh man, no. You put him where you want him, but I'd say A or B easily.
He just doesn't. I mean, to me, again, just the fact that he's willing to go along with everything Democratic leadership's doing.
Yeah.
And doesn't have the balls to take a stand or maybe he just doesn't want to. That's also possible. I don't know. I can't go higher than a C just because I'm not seeing a lot of intestinal fortitude here.
All right, so he's up there with Meijer. Okay.
All right, now we have last of the representatives, Fred Upton from the 6th District. Or no, he's second to last, sorry.
Yeah.
Fred Upton, born 1953, and he will be retiring this year, although I think a lot of that is due to the fact he's pretty sure he's going to lose. His district is centered on Kalamazoo, a lot of it borders Indiana, and he now holds a distinction of being the only U.S. representative in history to vote to impeach 2 different presidents, Clinton and Trump. His grandfather founded Whirlpool, which makes pretty much every washing machine in America, or at least a fuck of a lot of them. And his niece is Kate Upton, the supermodel.
Yep, that Kate Upton.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
And he is worth $78 million, which makes him one of the richest men in Congress. And that's not counting his family's total wealth. That's just his personal. So, some other relative dies, he gets even richer. So, he is another guy who was really well-to-do, and in many ways he's kind of an older version of the 3rd District representative we talked about, Pete Meijer.
Another thing he has in common with Meijer is that they both voted to hold Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress. Both Pete Meijer and Upton.
It was a group of 10 Republicans, so 1/5 of them were from Michigan.
I know.
Took those stands.
Yeah.
It's interesting because maybe Peter Meyer's model is Fred Upton, because I mean they are very similar in terms of their background and their politics.
That's interesting. Yeah, I could definitely buy that.
Yeah. So I mean, he was first elected to the House back in 1986. I couldn't really find much on his career before that, but to be fair, he was elected at about the age of 33, and for politics, that's a damn young age to get into Congress.
Yeah, that's that's a year earlier than this Meijer guy who's 34.
Yes, I mean, that's pretty much what happened here. He's always been a well-known moderate. He's always packaged himself as such unapologetically.
Yes.
A lot of Republicans will try to do the, I'm a conservative and a moderate, depending on where I'm talking, but Fred Upton has never really done that. Although we will see he did flip-flop on a couple issues, but that's just politician stuff, I guess. He was one of the biggest opponents of the ACA and one of the biggest pushers to repeal it. So while he's mostly known now for opposing Trump during the election, during the Obama years, Fred Upton was known as one of the staunchest opponents of the Affordable Care Act.
Right. Yep.
He did, however, co-sponsor the 21st Century CARES Act in 2016. Obama signed that into law, and basically this focuses on biomedical research. And effectively, it is kind of a big pharma giveaway because it does weaken a lot of regulations on new drugs and devices and facilitates the easy flow of government money into corporate hands. So Upton, make no mistake about it, the man is a thoroughgoing corporatist.
Yes.
Upton, however, does have some regard for the environment. So in this way, he's kind of like our Marine friend from earlier. In 2007, he pushed the light bulb efficiency bill. I don't remember the name of it, but it's the one where they made light bulbs more efficient. This is something I know a lot of people got pissed off about, even people on the left, by the way, because they were worried that light bulbs wouldn't be as bright. And when he did that, Glenn Beck held a whole segment about him calling him a socialist.
Yes. Fucking Glenn Beck. Oh, I'm so glad he is no longer relevant.
Yeah, he's now on the fringes where he always should have been. But, he started out backing Obama on the environmental issues, but later, even after he had been the light bulb guy, he then turned on Obama on that issue and tried to oppose and voted against Obama's energy standard increases, which he had been a major pusher for just a few years earlier. So, I mean, while he is not the most partisan person, Fred Upton still fell prey to pure partisanship in the early Obama years, where an initiative he wanted was being pushed and he decided to oppose it. So that was kind of...
The Energy Tax Prevention Act, due to his environmental policies, the LA Times wrote in 2011 that Upton represents one of the biggest threats to the planet. Jesus.
Yeah, so he flipped on that one pretty hard.
Yeah.
And he's also a huge supporter of Keystone XL.
Yeah.
However, he also is for background checks on gun sales. And that's something he talked about for a long time and voted for. But he's also anti-gay. Although he is against anti-gay rhetoric. So he's against gay rights, but he doesn't want people to talk shit about gay people.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Um,
Condemns controversial anti-gay remarks. What?
yeah, he also voted for the Violence Against Women Act, which a lot of Republicans did not. And he did vote for one bill last year that helps LGBTQ businesses. So I think it's, he's sort of like, he's a complicated business Republican. So on the gay issue, he's pretty conservative. On women's issues, he seems to be relatively moderate, or maybe even a little bit liberal for a Republican.
I mean,
I think
it's
he's sort of a
important.
civility Republican in many ways too, because he clearly is not cool with harsh rhetoric.
Right. Well, not only that. I mean, he who was it? I think it was another MTG quote pissed him off. Marjorie Taylor. I think it was when she said, "Yeah, here it is."
Well, he's the one who won the stripper of all her assignments.
Yeah, he joined 10 other Republican House voters with voting Democrats to strip Marjorie Taylor Greene of her House Education and Labor Committee and House Budget Committee assignments in response to her controversial public statements. Oh, Jesus. And then not to mention, he voted to hold Steve Bannon in contempt of court. He voted to impeach Trump. He did not sign the amicus brief. He's done a lot. He's done a lot of good things. He also went to a public university, U of M. I don't know what did he get his bachelor's in?
I don't know. I guess he got it in being rich, probably.
Yeah. Let's see. Bachelor's in journalism. Very interesting.
Journalism. Okay.
Journalism. Yeah.
Let's see. He also voted to repeal the authorization of military force against Iraq, which is cool. He voted to hold Bannon in contempt.
Yeah.
He supports DACA. And he's against any kind of hardcore crackdowns on immigration. So he's against information sharing between ICE and other agencies.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he's definitely going to lose. If he runs again, I feel like Michigan's it's becoming so polarized now.
If you notice how, most of the things he did that went against the Republican grain came in the last 2 years. So my personal theory of Fred Upton, based on that, is after he opposed Trump's big lie, and then the party started coming after him, he said, fuck it, I'm retiring. I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want now. Because I don't have to work. I'm not running again, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. Fuck it. So I think that's why he suddenly became much more willing to flip. And in fact, he voted with Biden, he voted with Trump only 78.6% of the time, which is pretty damn low for a Republican. Although, to be fair, there is that one woman from New York that Trump really likes, and she voted about the same way as Upton, but she has been publicly kissing his ass more.
Who's that?
Stepanek, I think.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, the biggest backer for Fred Upton is a group called No Labels, which is supposed to be a nonpartisan PAC, but as everybody who looks at their policies points out, they're extremely pro-wealthy and pro-establishment. So basically, they're kind of like a neoliberal group who says, hey, can't we all get along and agree that corporations are awesome? But not be dicks about it, let's just be friends, hold hands, and give money to corporate America. Come on. Deregulate, and low taxes. Yay. He's also and they're by far his biggest donor, but his second one is Amway Altacorp.
Oh, of course.
And then there's a private equity firm, RDV Corporation. There's Meijer Incorporated. So, again, you see that connection between two guys who are pretty damn similar. And you also have the American Council of Engineering Companies, which is kind of a random
apparently,
one.
So does it have the voting alignment with Trump's voting? Because I'm reading here. I'm not on Wikipedia. He has a 95.5% voting in line with Trump's stated opinion. Can that possibly be right? I don't know if they have that posted on this page. I can't find the...
What I found, I think, was on Wikipedia. It was the 78.6 number. Also, another thing he did is he condemned Trump's statements about the Squad being foreign-born.
Yeah, that was super interesting because one of the Squad is from Michigan. I mean, she's from one of the districts that represent Detroit.
Actually, Fred Upton is kind of like a Romney-style Republican, a business Republican who's all about civility. That's really his thing.
That's a good way of describing him. He's part of the Tuesday Group, which is a part of a group of moderate Republicans.
Yep, that's him, and he's also...
that DACA stuff's super interesting. That he supports DACA, and like you were saying, to prevent the ICE and the Human Health Services or whatever from detaining. Let's see, Upton. Yeah, that's all. That's all super interesting. And it's like shocking to come from someone in Michigan, because this is just not the way most of those guys talk.
Yes, he's a. Well, I mean, I guess it's not that strange when you think about him. He grew up in a polite society, so he's uncomfortable with any kind of challenging of the social order, making people uncomfortable.
Kalamazoo is like in a super blue county, so he represents a lot of Democrats.
Oh, he does.
It's gotta be part of the reason he's so moderate.
It could be part of it, and then also, I mean, he wants to be respected and liked, because, I mean, Kalamazoo has a huge university, so he doesn't want people talking about him as the, sort of poster boy of the dumb fuck faction of the Republican Party.
Right.
I mean, because, again, he grew up in this wealthy family, he sort of has a reputation he's supposed to uphold, and he probably gets pressure from his niece, not to embarrass the family name.
Please.
Doing dumb shit.
Uncle Fred, don't do it, Uncle Fred.
Don't go and talk about evolution being a lie from Satan, please.
Right.
Anyway,
he voted for impeachment, against. He did not sign the amicus brief, and he went to University of Michigan. Yeah. Good man. Good, solid, upstanding 68-year-old man.
And it's also interesting somebody as wealthy as him went to a public school. Although, University of Michigan, of course, is a very good school.
Yeah, U of M, Michigan State, and Wayne State are the kind of the research triangle, like three of the best schools in Michigan. Probably best in the Midwest. Some of the best in the Midwest. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I like him. I definitely like him. I'd hesitate to put him up there at a C with those other guys, but definitely he's above Jack. He's above the other guys. So maybe D. I'd be comfortable with D.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a little more complicit in corporate corruption than the other guys. On a personal level, he seems all right, but clearly he still serves corporations. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what he does. He just does it with a smile and a pat on the back.
Yeah.
Now we get to, I'd say, the most interesting, in some ways, of the representatives we'll cover today, and that's Tim Walberg from the 7th District. Yeah,
Walberg's super interesting. He went. He was originally going to go into forestry. He's not from Michigan. Let me see what state he's from. He's not from Michigan.
Also,
he's going to go into
if you
forestry.
Look at his face, and then you just wonder what his politics are based on his face. It's pretty much exactly what he looks like, honestly.
He's got pastor face.
I don't know what it is. Face. He's got like I'm on the council with Jerry Falwell face.
Yeah. He does.
And that's exactly who he is, though. I mean, a lot of people are not what they look like. He is, though.
Yeah. So he quickly dropped forestry to attend Moody Bible Institute.
Yep.
And
he maintained a pretty long association with him, by the way. He was basically teaching via literal correspondence, via mail for many years, before the internet was a thing for online teaching.
And then he went to Taylor University, I think, for pastoral studies or something like that. Neither of those places are in Michigan. And then finally, let's see what year. I don't have his thing pulled up, but he ended up moving to Michigan in, 1978, where he led services at a Union Gospel Church. So I suppose it will come as no surprise that he signed the amicus brief. He voted not to impeach Trump, and he wholeheartedly believes that global warming is not a big deal, guys, because God's going to see us through it. God's not going to let anything bad happen to us, okay? Pollute all you want. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. God will take care of it.
Also, I really want to look more into his early term in the House, because he was in Congress from 2006 to 2008, lost 2008, and then came back in 2010. But the guy he beat in 2008 was the guy who beat him in the primary in 2006, and then when he was running for that guy's seat, he endorsed, after losing the primary, his opponent endorsed a Democrat who barely won.
Oh my God!
So I want to know how nasty that campaign got, because I know it had to get pretty dirty for that to happen, because that's very unusual. Usually, the worst that happens is the former primary opponent sits it out after making a tepid formal endorsement.
He was one of the guys. He was right there with Trump way back in 2008 with Obama and all the birther shit. he repeatedly invoked birther conspiracies about President Barack Obama, arguing that he should have been impeached over his birth certificate.
Yes.
And in case anyone thinks I was kidding about the climate change stuff, quote, I believe there's a creator God who is much bigger than us, and I'm confident that if there's a real problem, he can take care of it. I'm not kidding, dude. That's a direct quote from
this is one of those times where I wish he was more of the bootstraps personal responsibility strike, because at least then he could think, well, you know, God gave us brains, we should maybe put them to use if we think there's a problem. But, you know, whatever.
There's this old interesting quote. I think I heard it at church back in the day, where there's this guy drowning, right? And then this boat comes up to him and is like, hey, do you need any help? And the guy's like, no, God's gonna help me, don't worry. And then another guy, I'm gonna horribly butcher this story. Long story short, 3 boats come and ask him, hey man, you need any help? And the guy says, no, I'm fine, God's gonna take care of me. And then he dies and he gets to heaven. He's like, God, why didn't you help me? And then God's like, dude, I sent 3 boats.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah. God's like, what the hell, Walberg? Come on, man. Stop it with all the climate change denial.
Yeah, it's like, my aid is extremely limited, son. I've got other shit going on. I got a game pass up here. Yeah, so let's see. Anything else interesting about him?
I mean, this guy's it's a shit show. I mean, he wants to ban gay marriage. I mean, this guy's one of the worst of the worst.
To give you something that is interesting about him, in terms of how far our politics has gone down the toilet in terms of excess money in politics. In 2008, his race drew a bunch of attention because between them, he and his Democratic opponent spent $3.5 million. And at the time, people were like, God damn, that's way too much money for a House race. Today, that is maybe standard or slightly below average. So just to give you an a little bit of a measuring stick for how far things have gone in the last, 15 years.
Jesus, that's terrifying. And you know what else? This I wanted to mention, and I'd love to hear your take on it. We talk a lot about campaign financing, right?
Yeah.
And who's funding who, etc. And even last episode in Montana, we talked about Matt Rosendale and how there were accusations of him taking a lot of money from the NRA that was undisclosed, right?
Yeah.
And that's breaking finance laws. Well, it turns out the FEC, the Federal Elections Commission or whatever, that's meant to investigate these things, will only investigate if they reach some amount of a majority that where, you know, if enough of them can agree to investigate each instance of campaign violations. But because fucking what's his name, the turkey guy, the giblets, what's his name, fucking how am I blank? Yeah, McConnell, because McConnell loaded the FEC with a bunch of his fucking people, they never agree to actually go and investigate any of these instances of campaign corruption. So they're basically, it's a free for all. They'll never agree to investigate anyone. You can complain all you want. These laws are not going to get enforced because McConnell believes that money is speech, and you should not prosecute any of that. So we really have no idea how much money is being given in these campaigns. Any amount can fly under the radar, and it's not going to be prosecuted unless they can reach some level of majority, agreement, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, because both parties really benefit from the system the way it is. There's no real incentive to get money into politics right now, which is why it would have to be done by a constitutional amendment, which is incredibly hard to do, but it's still easier than trying to pass a law through Congress, actually, because of how corrupt everybody is. One interesting thing about Walberg is that despite the fact he was in a very expensive race in 2008, since then his fundraising has kind of stagnated, and he's actually a notably below-average fundraiser now. Which, I guess on the positive end, to say one thing positive about him finally, he is technically not as corrupt as most, because he just sucks at raising money. So there you go. And it's not hard to see why. I mean, the guy's a religious nut job, and a lot of people probably don't want to give him too much money. His biggest donors are Haworth Incorporated, the furniture company, Patriot Group Construction, Liberty Title, which is a real estate firm with many offices in the Midwest. They do a lot of things with real estate, especially mortgages and whatever. Not surprisingly, Amway Alticor makes the top 5, and then Edward C. Levy. But, so I guess he is technically a little bit less corrupt than the other people we've talked about. Just because he's not that good at raising money. But he doesn't have to because he's in a safe district, or pretty safe-ish. It's gotten safer over time, actually.
Yeah, but he's in a suicidal death cult, so I'm afraid I can't cut him any slack for that.
I'm not necessarily calling for cutting him slack. I'm just saying, I mean, if we have to split hairs here, and it's not because he's unwilling to be corrupt. It's just there's no reason to give him money because he's safe. And then also,
I mean, he's in an R10 district.
Yeah. So,
I mean, he's a solid F for me, but you do you, man.
I think I'm fine with F for him. I mean, I could possibly be talking to an E because just of him being somewhat genuine, at least. I mean, because I think he's legitimately a fucking crazy person, and that's exactly what he acts like. So that'd be my argument for moving him up 1, but I'm fine with F because, I mean, the birthday bullshit definitely does not help legitimacy in the country.
There's this tweet I found from him. I'm gonna read this tweet really quick. What's his fucking name? It basically says that he basically says, "Fuck you, Putin. I'm not afraid of you. I stand strong in my hardcore American patriotic values." I gotta find the exact wording though. Tim Walberg. I don't know if I can find it that fast though. You can wrap him up while I'm looking for this.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tim Walberg, I think it's safe to say, easily the LVP so far. Now, whether he'll be surpassed in the next one, we'll see. But my gut feeling is probably not.
Yeah, he definitely grates on me, man. The only redeeming thing was that. Here we go. Make no mistake, Vladimir Putin is a thug, and there must be decisive consequences for his lawless invasion of Ukraine. The United States and our Russian allies present a posture of strength against Russia. Not that. It was more recent, and it wasn't specific to Ukraine, which my heart goes out to Ukraine. That it's fucking horrific what's going on there. But this is not the tweet I was talking about. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it in time.
Well.
Anyway, yeah.
All right. Well, next up, we'll talk about. You want to do lieutenant governor first, and then the governor, since the lieutenant governor will take like a minute.
Yeah, there isn't that much to mention in terms of Gilchrist. I mean, he's a smart guy. His parents were super successful.
Yeah, he worked at Microsoft for a few years. He was in Detroit government. He created an app as chief information officer in Detroit. One thing that is notable about him, I think it's safe to say he clearly has gone to work for the Democratic establishment if you just look at his rapid rise and what he's been involved in.
Oh, he is the first black lieutenant governor in the state.
Yeah, there's that, but also, I mean, not only was he plucked from obscurity to become lieutenant governor, but also, if you look at what he was doing around 2017, he founded the Center for Social Media Responsibility at U of M. This is in 2017. This was something Democrats were talking a lot about in the wake of 2016. So, I mean, this guy jumped onto that bandwagon of let's regulate Facebook and Twitter. And so...
God.
He is someone who is definitely trying to ride the trends and rise through the party by going with the issue of the moment. So that is going to be his trajectory. I imagine that in time this will be somebody who becomes governor or senator or something and is probably just a generic Democrat who holds water for corporations. I mean, that's the sense I'm getting so far. And also, he's a bit of a bullshitter, kind of Pete Buttigieg style, because in 2020, when Whitmer noticed that COVID deaths were unequal among black and white people, she put him in charge of investigating. And as he was investigating, this is when it really spread to more rural areas and more white people started to die. So the numbers became more even, and then he claimed that he succeeded.
Yeah, that's like
dude.
That. He went to school for engineering. I feel like he should understand statistics a little better.
I'm sure he does. I think
credit.
he just fucking lied about it to get credit. I don't think there's any. He's definitely too smart to think he did something. I mean,
yeah, that's really disappointing.
Yeah, so I mean, he just claimed success, hoping that people would go with it, and I think a lot of people do, actually. I mean, I imagine if you were to, attack him over this obvious lie, people say, oh, you're touting a Republican talking point.
Gilchrist clearly ended the racial divide, but no, what happened is not that black devs went down, white devs just went up. That's all that happened.
Yep. And he took credit for it. He's like, yes, all of my policies and shit have been working. We've reduced black deaths. No, you haven't. The ratio looks better because more white people are dying. That's it.
He's also, you can tell he's got the DNC connection because he was a vice chair in 2020, despite being a pretty inconsequential person, if we're being honest. One interesting thing, he's 39, so he's much younger than pretty much most of the other people here. Rashida Tlaib, of course, is from Michigan. She's younger than that, I'm pretty sure. His biggest donors so far, at least in the 2017-18 cycle, were UAW, so United Auto Workers finally makes an appearance, and the Michigan Regional Council for Carpenters. He also got a lot of money from the Democratic Party of Michigan, MoveOn.org, Michigan Laborers Something League, and former NBA player Shane Battier. But again, although at first he started out as someone who sort of tacked more progressive, the fact that he's been in the DNC and pulled this little stunt indicates to me that this guy is a social climber first and foremost.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, not that it matters, but he's like 6'8".
That makes sense.
He's a towering giant, and I don't know why, but he prefers this camera angle that's like the lens, the action of the lens is fucked up, and like his eyes and his glasses just look enormous. Like he's always on the front-facing camera. It's nuts. I don't know why he picks it for like all his interviews.
Does it emphasize his height?
It's his face. It's zoomed in on his face, like to emphasize his nerdiness.
Okay.
But I saw a picture of him shaking hands with Biden. This dude's like a foot taller than Biden.
Yeah, no,
and
he's
Biden's
a big dude.
tall.
I think that's maybe he played like high school ball with Shane Battier. Maybe that's how they know each other. Because I think
Battier would be about the same age. He's been retired for a few years now. But yeah, anyway, Gilchrist. I guess one theory a lot of people have, and there's a lot of truth to it, you don't see too many people make it very far in high-level politics if they're not at least slightly above average height.
I've seen that. I've seen that trend. That's super weird. Like presidents are getting taller.
They are getting taller, but also the last president who was kind of average height was Harry Truman, and of course he got it because FDR died.
Interesting.
But other than that, pretty much all presidents have been 6 feet or taller. So, I mean, that's why people, like, talk about his height as an asset, because, like, yeah, he's tall. I mean, that's something, I guess. But anyway, I don't know if we have enough to rate him on at this point. My suspicion is that...
He created the improved Detroit smartphone app, too, which helped people connect with officials and, report problems, light outages, or whatever, which is really important and really necessary in a city like Detroit, which we'll cover next episode. But it's a massive city that is sparsely populated.
Yeah, I mean, and
so
the
resources
thing is, like,
are hard to allocate out there.
I mean, like I said, I think he was plucked from obscurity because, again, he was someone who had a pretty short resume before becoming lieutenant governor. He had never been elected to anything.
Yeah. How old is he?
39.
Okay, so he's not as young as fucking Meijer, but
yeah, I mean, but he's still clearly he's a party project. They looked at this guy and they're like, "Yep, we should run him. You're now lieutenant governor of the state. Congratulations."
I mean, his dad worked for the Department of Defense.
His dad did, and his mom was, I think, a GM worker. So he's got a foot in both camps, both the corporate world and the labor world. But I mean, if we know anything about the modern Democratic Party, we know which side they tend to favor. And so my suspicion is that Gilchrist will completely abandon any pretense of being progressive going forward and become just a corporate hack. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. Maybe I am. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see, man. Detroit.
That's why I'm not rating him now, because I don't feel like there's anything to rate him on.
That's fair. That's fair.
He hasn't really done anything. I mean, lieutenant governors usually don't do that much, and apparently Michigan lieutenant governors are pretty toothless. So, not his fault necessarily.
Right.
All right.
I hope he learns from the misrepresenting thing, because that's just such a nail, like such a thorn in his side, man. You can't make fuck ups like that. Anyway, yeah. Now on to the fun stuff. This is. I thought we were gonna start with this, but
yeah, we're gonna get to Gretchen Whitmer, who I think it's safe to say at this point is almost certainly the most famous active Michigan politician.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't think of anybody who comes close. She was born in 1971.
Well, Snyder's famous, but for different reasons.
Yeah, although Snyder's fame has been fading since he left office, but still, yeah, he's pretty well known, and I guess even Granholm, his predecessor, is still fairly well known. I'd say the last 3 governors have been nationally famous, which is pretty impressive. That's actually not too common, unless it's like California. Whitmer is 51, which means that by political standards, she's young. She went to Michigan State, then she went to Michigan State Law, which interestingly enough, she's the first lawyer we've seen. But most of the time when you look at people who are involved in politics at this level, they almost are all lawyers, so interesting. She ran and lost for a state house seat back in the 90s and finally made it in the year 2000. So she also got involved in politics pretty young. She would have only been 29 when she was first elected. She did her 3 terms, and then she ran for state senate and did her 2 or 3 terms there. She was term limited out in 2015. And during her time, she became the first woman to be the Democratic leader of the state senate from 2011 to 2015. So that was one of her first claim to fame. 2013, she became nationally famous, at least for a minute, because she took a stance on abortion based on a personal story about a rape experience.
Yeah.
So imagine that current politics might serve to put her back in the limelight because she already has this track record. We'll see. So that was sort of her breakout moment. And after her term in the state senate ended, a county prosecutor in Ingham County went down for basically soliciting prostitutes and abusing them. So she was appointed to fill in his position for the last 6 months. So she did that. And then in 2018, she won the primary for the governor's race in all 83 counties. Interestingly enough, she was probably the most right-leaning Democrat in the primary because she was the only one who was not in favor of single-payer health care. Yeah, which is interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, shout out to Bernie who just introduced a Medicare for All bill, or is working on a Medicare for All bill again.
Yep. The GOP accused her of wanting to abolish ICE, but she denied it. She said she would just focus on the basics: schools, roads, water systems. And then she won pretty easily in a year that was very good for Republicans, 2018. So she won by about 10 points. Actually, no, that was a good Democratic year. Sorry. It was the backlash against Trump.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so got that a little confused. But anyway, she won pretty handily, especially by Michigan standards for governor's races. And effectively, her time as governor has been her trying to pass fairly modest reform and the Republicans trying to fight her tooth and nail on literally everything. And of course, she will be up for re-election this year.
Yes. Yes, she will.
So one of her initiatives was to try to raise gas taxes in order to work on infrastructure. That failed, and I think that's pretty damn dead. She had trouble passing a budget. I think she eventually got it done, but it was a fight. She has pushed for more women's health care and Medicaid expansion. I'm not sure how much success she's actually had, because the Republicans, again, have fought her pretty effectively the whole time. A dam burst in May 2020, so I guess that sort of proved her point about infrastructure. I'm not sure if it really helped get too much more money, though. Her stay-at-home order for COVID was actually pretty popular. Now, a lot of governors around the country who did this took shit for it, but for the most part, she actually had public approval for doing this.
Yeah, in the earlier days of COVID, people were terrified of it. They wanted to see their governments doing something about it, having these orders. Obviously, not everyone was happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, but especially the people who wanted to kidnap her and do some other shit.
Yeah, but, they recently got acquitted. Those guys got acquitted. Yeah,
because of entrapment.
Yep, and then the other two that were kind of more obviously crazy people, they only got off because the jury couldn't couldn't come to a unanimous decision, which is necessary in order to convict somebody.
Yeah.
One of those guys, I forget his name, but he was a legitimate psychopath and definitely talked multiple times about wanting to kill people, wanting to harm government officials and cops, just brutal, violent stuff. That was not just locker room talk or
right. There was a little bit of an agent provocateur angle though, where the FBI helped to set up meetings for these crazy fucks to get them to work together and start making their plans.
And that's why two of them got off.
Federal was because their meeting was in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, the FBI is kind of notorious for fucking shit up by being overambitious. Michigan Supreme Court ruled that the stay-at-home order is not covered by the 1976 Emergency Management Act. So, of all the powers that this can give you, including the ability to fuck up Flint's water system for years on end, apparently stay at home to deal with the pandemic is not one of them. So it's amazing it has that limitation of all the things. But that's one of those things where even if it's a dumb reason to oppose it, the law itself is so bad, the Emergency Management Act, that any challenge to it is something I almost have to support. Because that Emergency Management Act, I think, is the biggest millstone around Michigan's neck.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's there was a time under Snyder's reign where half of all black people in Michigan didn't have their elected officials ruling, their towns and cities. Half of all black people had these emergency managers.
Yep.
Calling the shots.
Yeah, and
democracy be damned.
If your town in the governor's judgment, if your town was spending too much money or budget wasn't balanced or whatever the case might be, he'd be like, all right, emergency manager. It's an emergency.
You don't deserve to handle your finances anymore, so I'm going to step in and do it all for you.
So we're overriding democracy. I'm just going to appoint some douchebag business asshole that I know, and he'll be your new dictator. He'll pass all your laws and control everything, and he will have zero accountability, so that's fun.
Right.
That's the way government should work in America.
Whitmer, really quick, just a little bit. I think this goes to show kind of her foresight. Immediately after Trump did what he did with the Supreme Court, and because of her stances on abortion, before the leaked opinion came out, long before that, she suspected that something like this may be coming down the pipeline, and that the abortion ruling or the whole abortion thing would be kicked back to the states.
Yeah.
She suspected this might be happening, so she made a huge push to remove from Michigan law this old law from 90 years ago banning abortion.
Right.
I don't remember if it got pushed, what ended up happening with it, but she had the foresight, which I think is
she actually
saying
didn't
a lot.
Start doing this until September of last year, so it wasn't quite as early, but still it was ahead of the curve. And it is something that she'll be able to point to. The problem is that, again, because Republicans basically they try to do to her what they did to Obama on the national level. So Whitmer, in many ways, has not really been able to get that much done. And so this is another example of something she can't get past.
She did help the push to legalize pot, which is huge in Michigan.
Yep.
And again, one of the excuses that the defense attorney for those wackos was, all these guys, these are just conversations these weekend warrior stoners were having. They didn't mean any of it. Pot's so interesting because in Michigan, it was enforced basically along racial lines. It was just an excuse cops had to fuck with black people. I know plenty of white people who never had issues with being from the suburbs. You could smoke and barely worry about it. Now I do want to say I know a couple people who did get in trouble for weed, but it was a racist law that stayed way longer than it needed to, and she was one of the major pushes to legalize recreational use.
Most of the cops who are desperate to keep weed in place is because it's easy to use as a charge you can use for further investigations or detainment.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, I don't think too many serious people really think that weed is that much of a problem.
Right.
There are a few people, but mostly, because I think there's 20% or so of people who have negative reactions to marijuana. It makes them more paranoid rather than chill.
You can get over that.
Yeah, but,
But still-
I think they probably try it once and they're like, oh, this is bad. This
Yeah.
clearly has this effect on everyone. It's not just my body
Right.
chemistry.
Right.
So this is clearly a fucking problem, and it's the devil's grass or whatever.
But that's something huge that she helped push through. That was definitely popular. I don't know about if it was popular on the Republican side, but she hasn't done nothing, and she's invested a lot in infrastructure. Like Michigan, this all kind of ties together. Like the roads in Michigan are terrible because of how icy and snowy it gets. We always have road construction.
Yep.
And in that same breath, that was one of her big pushes. She gave the response speech to Trump's State of the Union, this most recent one, and that was something she talked about. And this ties into the Flint thing, because on top of an emergency manager being put in place and having the democratic powers of the elected officials in Flint completely stripped away and removed, part of the reason that the Flint River and all of the issues that happened surrounding Flint and the pipes was because there was so much salt from the sodium chloride that was poured on the roads to combat the ice washed into the river. So you don't have that problem from lakes, from the freshwater sources, but the emergency manager that Snyder put in place at Snyder's order decided you people don't deserve the fresh water from Detroit. You can't afford it. We're going to switch you to this Flint River water. And that would have been fine had they kept what are called orthophosphates. They're anti-corrosive chemicals that keep a nice coating along the pipes to keep them from corroding. Because there are millions of lead pipes in the U.S. Millions. But we don't typically see issues with them leaching because of the anti-corrosives that we put in the water. Now, when they switched it, Snyder's emergency manager said, no, sorry guys, we can't afford those either, those anti-corrosives, so don't worry about it. It'll probably be fine. Sure enough, we all know what happened. It definitely was not fine. The pipe started to corrode. None of the anti-corrosives were there to protect the pipes. So what ended up happening is now a bunch of the chloride. Yes, salt is corrosive, right?
Yeah.
On top of there being no anti-corrosives, the water had higher levels of chloride, which led to the iron and the lead washing into the water. And on top of there being higher levels of chloride, it can form compounds that turn the lead into something that is water soluble. So that it has a kind of another vehicle for lead to get into your body. And I mean, I could spend an hour talking about lead and all the consequences of that, maybe in another video or something. But it crosses the blood-brain barrier easily, and scientists have trouble finding chemotherapy drugs that do that. Lead does it no problem. So it's absolutely dangerous, absolutely poisons children. As part of their attempt to combat this, they added. Forget the name of the chemical, but they added something to try to combat it. But what ended up happening was with all the loose chloride ions that were reacting with the iron. Oh, chlorine, treated water, right? Treated water has chlorine in it. That's what helps kill the bacteria, right? All water has this. All treated water has this. But once you have pipes corroding and all of this iron in the water, chlorine ends up reacting with the iron, completely deactivating and no longer having the antibacterial properties that it had. So now you've got not only lead poisoning people, but bacteria running amok. Literally 12 people that we know of died from Legionnaire's disease. This is the third largest outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in the history of the country. Some estimates put it up as high as 80 people dying from this. So you've got lead in the water, you've got all of these horrible toxic chemicals in the water, and it's all being covered up because this emergency manager corresponds only with Snyder's office, and they are not accountable to the voters. They told everyone, don't worry about the water. It's just iron. That's why it looks like that. Don't sweat it. It'll be fine. And people were told to just keep drinking it.
Yeah.
So now
it's fucked up.
Not only do we have dead people, thousands of poisoned kids. Proficiency tests have dropped in Flint from 40 to 50% down to 10.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
not
it's a
only
neural
that, you're also gonna have long-term health problems, not
Oh,
just
yeah.
learning problems. I mean, it's gonna
Oh,
be
yeah.
bad. Uh, but speaking of that, I mean, of course, one of the things Whitmer ran on was effectively cleaning that up. So she passed a sort of relief package in late 2020. So, trying to fund help for all the people who have been poisoned and trying to correct the problem. Um, but other than that, so at first it looked like she wasn't going to really go after Snyder and his associates. So in 2019, the Attorney General basically said, I guess they're going to get away scot-free. But then apparently they changed their minds in 2021. And I imagine the reason why Whitmer changed her mind on this is because the Republicans were fucking with her agenda so hard. So she's like, oh yeah, I'll get you back. Let's go after Snyder. So Snyder he's right now facing charges of 2 misdemeanors, which is pretty minor considering the enormity of what he did. But he's facing 2 misdemeanor counts of willful neglect of duty. But his advisor, Baird, who I don't know if he was the emergency manager or just an advisor back at Lansing, but he's facing some serious federal
felonies.
pain-in-the-ass
There are some
time.
felonies.
Yeah, like extortion, obstruction of justice, misconduct, and perjury. So, I mean, he's looking at some hard fucking time.
I mean, it just reminds me of this idea that, okay, yeah, the water's, it's always been there. Water's not that big of a deal. These structures are in place. They'll be there. We can fuck with them a little bit. They're resilient. They'll be fine. Not taking into account any of the really important shit in science that goes into water processing. It's just all about saving money.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much about saving money. It's actually Snyder was trying to privatize the water in Flint because one of his donors had established a water company and was going to make profit off of the city.
That may be true, but it was all under the guise.
Well, of course, under the guise, but I mean, nobody actually gives a flying fuck about saving money. It's always about some business interest.
That was the intention. The proposal saved $200 million. It may have made his friends some money, but it ended up not only not saving $200 million, but let's see, between. Oh, I have it covered up. It ended up costing millions, if not hundreds of millions.
Yeah, and they've also sent federal money there, not just state money. I mean, so it's been an expensive and failed experiment in privatization. Again, but anytime water or any other major utilities privatize, this kind of shit happens. I mean, this is par for the course. This is what you get.
Right. Because there aren't smart people sitting there that know what they're talking about.
And by the way, when we talk about saving money, anytime things are privatized, like a utility, now it's possible the state saves money, but you know who pays a lot more? The people who live there. I remember I lived in Lexington when they privatized the water companies, and they set up Kentucky American Water. So you know that they're trying to fuck you when they try to appeal to you with local and national identity all at once, right?
Oh god.
So I fortunately had water provided by my place, but I had a friend who didn't. And their water bill at the place he lived went from, that's because to Sean, the guy I do a lot of things with on my other channel, his water bill went from $33 a month to $100 overnight when
Nice.
Kentucky American Water took over. And again,
Nice.
the whole purpose of privatizing water is not because it's more efficient or better. It's because you can set up a middleman, and they will get this kickback from politicians, and that's why they continue to give money to politicians so they can make more money. That's all it boils down to. It's just pure corruption.
Yikes.
So.
Yeah. I mean, that Moolenaar guy, we mentioned him briefly. I think it was him that's also pushing for a lot of privatization stuff in terms of corrections and schools and all that.
And that's probably true. I mean, that's also a big DeVos project. So I imagine all these Michigan Republicans are big on that. She basically wants to completely destroy the public school system and go to all charter schools.
Right. And in case people don't remember, DeVos was the one that Trump nominated for the Secretary of Education position, and during her being grilled by I think it was Al Franken or something, he asked her, so where do you stand on the whole debate between proficiency and growth? And proficiency is kind of like reaching a minimum level, whereas growth is measuring where you started versus where you are when you're going out. And her answer was basically some garbling of the idea of proficiency and yada yada yada. She did not understand the basic distinction between this very common debate.
Yeah.
And Franken's like, you know what? I'm surprised you don't. And then he corrected himself. I'm actually not surprised. You don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean that's why I really wish Franken was still in the Senate, but
Yeah.
Kirsten Gillibrand had to make a play for girl power, and
I didn't follow much of that.
Basically, there was a picture or something where he was accused of grabbing somebody's boobs. I think it was for some sort of a weird joke.
Right.
So it's taken somewhat out of context. And he probably could have weathered it because, I mean, there are a lot of much more real scandals out there.
Well, I mean, Andy's gay.
Well, also, this was in the middle of Me Too, right? So then Kirsten Gillibrand, who has tried to sort of make herself the leading woman in the Senate, like, I'm the women's rights person, they were best friends behind the scenes. Like, they would actually hang out, socially, she and Franken.
Right.
And then she decided to come out and say, Al's my friend, but he really did something horrible. I feel uncomfortable around him. He really betrayed women.
I mean,
and needs to go home.
If it made her uncomfortable, that's something.
No, it was
I
a
think
completely political move to try to get herself to be president because she was a 2020 contender, and that was basically she tried to run on. Literally in one of the debates, she said, "Women of America, listen to me." So she literally tried to play the woman card, even though there were like 8 other women running.
I mean, according to this article, she was asleep during the whole thing. She did have a bulletproof vest on, so he didn't actually touch her, and that's important. That's important.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it was some sort of like USO thing. I don't know the details, but I mean, he was there somewhat in the capacity of entertainer, right?
Right.
Anyway, the whole thing was a little overblown. I mean, way overblown, especially when there were other much more serious scandals where the people just shrugged them off and kept going. And then Al Franken had a 1 out of 10 scandal and got drummed the fuck out of the Senate. And then immediately everybody regretted doing it. It was like, wow, we really overreacted. We gave away a senator for nothing.
Jesus.
And it was completely, like, the Republicans weren't really pressing on this because they don't give a fuck. This was entirely the Democrats purging Franken and then going back and say, oh man, we fucked that up. That was a bad idea. And then they, of course, blamed Gillibrand because she was the one who said we have to do it to protect women. So
I'm gonna be digging into that story a little more. Right, yeah. Right.
So now, before that, she was seen as a rising star, and she's one of those people the party was pushing. But now, they see her as somebody who's harmed organizations, so they're a lot cooler towards her. But anyway, so how are we gonna rank Gretchen Whitmer? Because I guess it comes down to intentions versus effectiveness. Because I
mean, I love her, dude, and she's passed a lot.
I mean, for reasons that are not entirely her fault, she has not been very effective just because, I mean, we live in such a partisan era.
Right.
Republicans have been opposing her. The one thing I will hold against her, though, 2 things, actually. One is that she waited so long to go after Snyder and company, and only did so when the rest of her agenda got shanghaied. I'm glad she did eventually go after them. Accountability is extremely important, but I think this should have been a priority from day one.
Yeah.
2 is that she is against single-payer health care and always tries to take the oxygen out of the room when the topic comes up. She says it's unrealistic and undoable. So it's the Hillary Clinton line on that.
Yeah, that's obnoxious.
The reason why I find that especially obnoxious is not because I don't think it's a genuine position. There are many other countries in the world that have single-payer healthcare systems. It is very doable.
So she's all for insurance reform. I mean, during her response to the State of the Union, she talked about how she gave birth to her first child when she turned 30, and her mom was struggling fighting brain cancer, and she was constantly on the phone with these insurance companies. So I guess there's a fine line to walk, but if you're
but I mean, really, it's not just
it's like you're on the wrong side.
The insurance companies is ultimately a losing battle. I mean, you can regulate some, and then things will improve for a short period of time and then get shittier again because the insurance companies will keep using their lobbyists to get those new regulations repealed. I think you really have to give them the axe if you really want to make permanent progress on healthcare.
I agree. It's a basic human right, man.
I mean, that's the biggest problem with America is we have too many fucking middlemen who contribute nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing of value.
They only take.
They're leeches.
They take. And I mean,
I think healthcare is the perfect example of that. So, I mean, that's why overall, yeah, I think Whitmer's a pretty good governor, especially compared with what she replaced. Because I think Snyder as a human being is actually more despicable than Trump. But anyway,
See, I actually see COVID in the mishandling of COVID very similar to the mishandling of Flint. There were people that
Flint was
saw
way
it,
more intentional because Flint was an
sounded the
artificial
alarms.
crisis that Snyder enabled because he basically said, "Look, I'm here to suck businesses' dick. If you want to privatize the water system, do it. I will back you up no matter what happens. Okay, it's a disaster. We're just gonna keep fucking going. Make your money, sir. Let's milk these motherfuckers for every penny." I mean, this is
And you
actually
know what?
way worse than Trump
Yeah.
with COVID.
I even heard that like nothing was really even considered like actionable until one of the auto parts plants was like complaining that their auto parts were getting corroded by the water, and then they started taking it seriously, which is just absolutely fucked.
No, I mean,
Absolutely.
that's the whole thing. I mean, we live in a system where only a few people have power, and almost all the people who do have power are either white, wealthy, or both. You know, I mean, that's neoliberalism 101. And, I mean, Snyder was kind of the ultimate expression of that. Just,
Yeah.
you know, let business do literally anything it wants, fuck everybody else.
Right.
Right. And then use the
Right.
power of the state to really enable business and funnel money. But when it comes to ranking Whitmer,
I mean, I'm still uncomfortable with Kildee and Meijer being in the same tier. I say move Kildee up to a B or move Meijer down to a D, and put Whitmer either in C with Kildee or a B by herself. I mean, she
yeah,
does.
I'm good with that. I think she's
does
probably
as
a
much
B.
as she can.
And
Maybe notch Meijer down to
yeah, we can move
down to
Meijer
D there
down
with
one.
with his idol.
We'll make him the D plus effectively, and then yeah, I think that's about right. Although, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much better he is than Kildee, but you know they're kind of in the same ballpark, I guess.
You mean how much better he is than Meijer? Kildee is objectively better than Meijer, in my opinion. But Meyer's
he
new.
does carry a lot
Meyer's
of water
new.
for the establishment, though. I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of a problem.
yeah. But there's some pretty
he's done a
interesting
few things.
outliers. Yeah,
He's not
yeah.
completely useless. I'll give him that. I mean, that's something. Whereas, I mean, the people we put
Meyer's
in
too new. You know, there's not much we know about Meijer at this point.
That's true. Meyer's still a bit unproven, so that's something we have to keep in mind. Moolenaar, yeah, that guy sucks. Let's see, Kildee, we'll put him in C. I'm just writing this down for next time, and then Upton's a D, and we have Walberg at a very respectable F. Okay.
We should add a question mark tier, so we could get Gilchrist out of that
Yeah, I'm just gonna
unranked.
put a U for unranked or unrankable.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's it for today. I guess we got to figure out when we want to do part 2.
Yeah, I don't know. We can decide. We can decide later.
Right.
Thanks for all fucking 13 of you hanging out and watching this shit and like going
Yeah.
through this with us.
Yeah, watching us talk about these.
We didn't talk much about Michigan itself, so maybe we'll try and do that a little bit because I know we have a lot to cover when we go over Detroit. This was definitely the most boring side of Michigan.
Yeah, I mean that's part of why we decided to do this as the warm up. I mean, because obviously
Yeah.
Whitmer and a few of the others are pretty important, but I think it's safe to say the senators are probably more important than most of the representatives we've talked about so far in terms of their national impact. 'Cause, I mean, Michigan senators tend to be pretty big.
Right. I want to mention that this, if it felt longer, it's because the last 2 states we did had like 1 or 2 reps, and that was it. So the rest of these are gonna be longer, and we're gonna try and break them up into part 1, part 2. California, I think we're gonna have to break into like 3 or 4 parts. But
At least, yeah. I mean, California, that's one I'm not looking forward to. I mean, I don't know, for the next one, maybe we can do something like Ohio or North Carolina and also in 2 parts.
yeah, I think Ohio is definitely the one to do. It's a pretty interesting race going on.
And there's also a lot of connections between Ohio and Michigan. I mean, a lot of the companies that donate to Michigan politicians are actually Ohio-based, but they share the border.
Interesting trivia bit. Michigan sold Ohio, Toledo, and that kind of strip down there for the entire UP. The entire UP was traded for that little sliver that has Toledo in it, right on the border of Michigan and Ohio.
Wow. Well. Oh, well. I mean, I know, our friend Dries would say that was a very big win for Ohio because Toledo he calls it the cradle of Western civilization. So,
is that right? I'd love to hear him pontificate about Toledo now. I love Dries, man. He's so great.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's a Toledan. Well, anyway, thank you all for joining us. Next time we'll do part 2, covering the other 7 representatives, the 2 senators. So that is all for now, though. Good to get this back on the road.
Yes, I just wanted to mention I didn't post anything on my science channel yet because for a lot of reasons. One of many is we're moving, and my wife got COVID, so that was fun.
That sucks.
Yeah, she's okay. She's fine.
Yeah.
I locked myself in a closet, so I didn't end up getting it, but she was okay. She was basically I'm kidding, obviously.
Yeah,
she was basically asymptomatic.
All right. Yeah, my mom got it. She's not vaccinated for
Oh,
reasons
no.
I don't want to get into.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I can
she was fine though. It was Omicron.
That's good.
And she was down for a couple days, and she's all right.
All right.
So
That's good. That's good.
anyway, but thank you all for joining us, and next time we'll do part 2 of the Michigan representatives. Peace
Adios.
out, and remember, most of your congressmen are not your buddies. Later. All right.
All right.